Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Laura. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 11th, 2021 meeting of the Town of Niskayuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission. Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme.
Present.
Mr. Scributennis has indicated he'll be absent. Mr. Khan. Mr. Khan.
Here.
Mr. McPartlin.
Here.
Mr. Darpino.
Here.
Mr. Oster.
Here.
Ms. Shenfield.
Here.
Ms. Gold.
Present.
Chairman Walsh.
Here. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Just I guess a couple quick announcements. One is a Happy New Year, everybody. Look forward to working with you all again this year. And also that the town board did, I believe it was the January 5th, they had their organizational meeting. Mr. Scributennis was reappointed to another 7-year term, and Ms. Gold and Ms. Shenfield were reappointed as alternates to the planning board. So congratulations to them and welcome again. And I was also reappointed as your chairman for calendar year 2021, and I thank the town board for that. Okay, we have no minutes tonight. So we'll go right to the public hearing. So we have a public hearing tonight on 2627 Troy Road. This is an application for approval of a plat plan for a 4-lot minor subdivision. Mr. Henry, would you please read the notice?
Notice is hereby given that pursuant to section 187-7 of the Code of the Town of Niskayuna and the applicable provisions of New York Town Law, section 276, a public hearing will be held by the Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the Town of Niskayuna by video conference on the 11th day of January 2021 at 7 p.m. to consider an application from Joel Basilian for a 4-lot minor subdivision at 2627 Troy Road in the Town of Niskayuna. The property is located within the R1 low-density residential zoning district. The Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the Town of Niskayuna will hear all persons interested during the aforementioned public hearing. By order of the Planning Board of the Town of Niskayuna, New York, Kevin A. Walsh, Chairman, Planning Board and Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And what we'll do is, as we typically do, is we have the applicant, if they're joining online, and he'll give a brief overview of the project before we open it for public comment. Hey, Joel?
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Going forward, the development is now called the Overlook. So I presume that in the future that the Niskayuna Park will be called Overlook Park. As Kevin mentioned, it's a 4-lot minor subdivision. The 5th lot in the blue color is land that's to be deeded to the town of Niskayuna for the park, where you can park off of Troy Road and access the Leishkill Nature Preserve, and it'll be tied in with the Nature Conservancy land. The 4 lots, the corner lot, lot number 4, the house, the driveway is going to be changed to access off of Shannon Boulevard, and we will fill in the driveway off of Route 7. Right now, we're stabilizing the house and put a new electrical service in, and we're trying to get it to the point where we can sell it for somebody to restore. The 3-lot, we just finished the full stormwater pollution prevention plan today. We just sent that to the town. I apologize, I didn't expect it this fast. That will be, probably Laura will have that online for people, for the public to view. But essentially, there's no retention pond. One of the lots, lot number 2, has a culvert, and that's kind of about it. And with the planning, we have committed to put up a split rail fence delineating the parkland boundary from the housing lots. We committed to spot the driveways, working with the town committees to avoid any large trees. We committed to minimizing clearing on the land. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Joel. And of course, the development is serviced by public water and sewer. That's correct, right?
Yes, everything, all the utilities are on Shannon Boulevard.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Laura, do you have anybody wishing to be heard regarding the public hearing for Troy Schenectady Road, 2627?
I don't have any emails to read, but I do know that Dan Fromowitz is online and there's a couple other people as well.
Okay.
Dan, do you want to start?
Sure, thanks. People can hear me? All right, thanks. I'll only take about 5 minutes tonight. I'm Daniel Fromowitz, residing in 1010 Shannon Boulevard. I'm one of the neighbors on Shannon Boulevard directly across the street from the lot of 2627 Troy Schenectady Road. I had previously expressed concerns to this board and commission regarding new development along Shannon Boulevard. I'd just like to make 2 points tonight. And the builder, Joel Bazoin, is already aware of these, either like we've spoken about him or first time I met him, I spoke to about him. And he's already expressed being in agreement with one or both of them. My first point is that my neighbors and I would like to save as many trees as possible along Shannon Boulevard. Joel even just mentioned that was a concern too he was going to address. I know Joel does not need to consider the opinions of his neighbors, but I'm glad that he is. And I also appreciate that Joel has stated that he's in favor of the tree conservation. The reason this is important to the Avon Crest neighbors, this development here, is because of the scenic view we neighbors have and thought we always would have. As we addressed in planning and zoning meetings late last year, the original neighbors and some second owners like myself were told that the west side of Shannon Boulevard was forever open space. That was true when many of the original owners had purchased their lots, but after the original owner made their quote unquote inadvertent land transfer around 1990, the town held a hearing to discuss this and approve a land swap for the open space location. However, unlike tonight's public hearing, the residents nearby in Shannon Boulevard 30 years ago were not given specific notice of the hearing, nor was there any mechanism to inform them of the resulting change in the location of the open space. So that led to the recent events where we neighbors were surprised that the land directly across the street from some of us could be bought and developed. And if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen to show one item. All right, hopefully you can see 2 photos. Laura, do you see 2 photos?
You might have to do one more click.
One more click? All right, thank you. Oh, yes, one more. Okay, now I think you can see 2 photos. So this is a picture from my property.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
It's coming now.
Okay, just a little slow. Okay,
There we go.
okay. Get rid of that. All right, so this is a photo, 2 photos from my property looking up Shannon Boulevard. The left view is from this summer. This is Joel's property. That's like lots part of 2, 3, and 4. And on the right is a view, recent image I took after Joel's done some clearing. And of course you could see more into the woods now because it's winter and there's less foliage. But before Joel started work on the lot, like in previous winters, I could like never see the house, and the garage only occasionally I could see a few square feet. I could see, and that was it ever. Usually it was just totally solid. So the land will look a lot different after Joel is done. So in recognition of this difference, I am happy that Joel will be trying to keep like some of the trees along Shannon Boulevard. So I really appreciate that, Joel. And I also appreciate Joel being amenable to positioning driveways a little bit to try to preserve some of those large trees along the road. And I also appreciate that Joel, thank you, Joel, is donating a sizable portion of the land on the backside to make public access to Leishkill into the Leishkill natural area. And my second point is that in keeping with a scenic view, I hope that Joel will not install excessively bright exterior lighting. I know I've seen some houses occasionally with what I would consider commercial grade LED lighting. And I know I and probably several of my neighbors have appreciated the dark night views. So I hope that in the future, I and my neighbors, including the future neighbors who are going to buy Joel's future homes, that they'll be able to have like some of the darker views and not have the like commercial grade lighting. That would just help preserve the look at night of the area. So that's it. And I thank everyone for their time.
Thank you, Mr. Fromowitz. Appreciate it. We have anybody else that would like to be heard regarding the public hearing on 2627 Troy Road online?
This is Bruce Barash. I also live across the street next door to the Fromowitzes. And I guess my concern with this is, and I haven't seen anything, any kind of a document, but Laura and others have said this has been looked into. And that is changes in drainage and water. And if the town's engineer has looked at this and is basically going to guarantee us that these changes are not going to cause problems to us, it would be nice to see it in writing so that they could be held accountable for it. The reason I say this is because we've been here probably the longest, 31 years. And as the houses above us were developed, quite honestly, I think people were did not do a good job of making sure that things were done in a way that our property wouldn't be harmed in terms of a whole bunch of water coming our way. And some of it is unfixable. And some of it I was able to make better at my expense by putting in drainage. And I still have fears that the same thing could happen with this. And I would like, you know, assurance that this has been taken care of and somebody has affixed their name to it, just in case we have problems down the line.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barash. Anything else? No? Okay, anybody else wishing to be heard for the public hearing? Okay, hearing or seeing no one else, I'll close the public hearing on 2627 Troy Road. Thank you for your input. It is on the agenda for discussion as a discussion item a little bit later. There is no board action tonight on this subject though. All right, so we'll move to privilege of the floor. Anyone wishing to be heard regarding any planning and zoning matters in the town of Niskayuna, please state your name and address for the record, and we'll listen to what you have to say. Laura, do you have anybody online specifically for privilege of the floor? Or is there anybody online?
I don't have anybody specifically, but I do just want to, like, because I get sometimes confused when people are sending me an email or if they're sending it under privilege of the floor. So for the record, I do forward these on to you. I think Gail is still expressing concerns of parking. Gail King, property owner in the vicinity of the Broken Inn, is still expressing concerns about the parking in that area and the square footage and how it works with the seating inside. I feel like those two concerns have been passed on to me. I'm just not really clear if it's privilege of the floor or else, but I'll just put it on privilege floor so it's all there.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Anything else or anyone online who would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Kevin Sponable. I'm new to the Niskayuna area here, and I have a house on 2456 Hilltop. And I'm actually number 4 on your agenda. I don't know if you're asking.
Nope. What we'll
just
do,
on this.
we'll get to that project in a little while, and then we'll.
All right, so you're just asking on the project that's going on now, right?
Correct. We'll get to that,
Okay.
and we'll have you have an opportunity to fill us in a few moments, hopefully. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, sir. All right. I'm glad you can make it tonight. Okay. That's it for privilege of the floor. Hearing no one else, I'll close privilege of the floor and we'll move on the agenda. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move right to new business. And under new business, we do have one resolution. That's resolution 2021-01, a resolution for site plan approval for a major accessory structure, and that's a carport at 398 Anthony Street, which is the J-Dog junk removal. And summarizing that resolution basically is that resolved, the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves the site plan. Mr. O'Flamm, do I have a motion on the resolution?
Yeah, I move that we support the resolution adopted.
Okay, Mr. Laflamme has moved the resolution for adoption. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. This is Mr. Khan.
Is that Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that was seconded by Mr. Khan. And do we have some discussion? And I knew we have a representative. I think it's Mr. Gagnon or Ms. Gagnon is online if we have any questions for them. If they have
Hi.
anything.
Robin and Tyler here.
Hey, Robin, just a quick question. This is Chris. Did you get an answer on the structural stability of fastening the tent? Was there any insight into how that would be connected to the ground?
Yeah, so I sent over all the plans to Mr. Henry and Miss Robertson, and it's just they fasten, they secure it. I don't exactly know how they do it, but I did send over all the plans. It's got the stamp of approval from New York, everything they said. And I also talked to the neighbors and made sure that they were okay, and everybody was perfectly fine with it.
Okay.
So yeah, I did all that, but however it is, it's up to New York State code. They have the New York State stamp of approval to put it up, and it met all the wind and snow requirements.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you reached out to your neighbors just so they're at least aware of the project, even though it's been posted. It's nice to make sure they know about the project.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other discussion or comments at all? I have none. It's pretty straightforward. We talked about it extensively at the last meeting. It sounds like it'll be a benefit to the applicant and to the business down there with minimal impact. So any other comments at all? Okay. Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Mr. Ms. Shenfield,
Aye.
Mr. Alster,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. Okay, resolution passes. Congratulations. And do you have any questions, Ms. Gagnon?
Just how do I go about obtaining the permit? Do I come down? Do you guys mail it? How does that work?
So we're still operating at 100%. The town hall is just not open to the public.
Okay.
So if you just want to give us a call in the morning, we can either meet you outside, you can email, we're doing things electronically.
Email works for me. Yeah,
Email is best. Yeah. So we'll just review all the stuff that we received, wrap it all up, and then email you. And then of course you have to pay for it, which you can do like through the mail slot. And then you're good to go. We can even email you the permit.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll email you guys in the morning. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have a great night.
You too. Okay, move as no other new business tonight, so we'll move to discussion items. First discussion being 2627 Troy Road application for the plot plan for the 4-lot minor subdivision that we just had the public hearing on. Mr. McPartlin and the applicant we have. So I guess I'll turn it over to Mr. McPartlin, see if he wants to add anything to that.
Well, just in terms of where we stand, we received a basic stormwater pollution prevention plan from the applicant this afternoon, and we're still waiting on engineering review of that plan. And I have a question about whether or not the basic SWIP will be sufficient, or if we need a full SWIP, given the area of disturbance. And certainly I would want to see any comments that engineering would have on the proposed remediation and stormwater management practices being proposed. So, I think that's the big item to come through. I know we had initially spoken with the applicant about potentially having a resolution for final plat approval next meeting, but we do have this to come through, and the residents have raised some concerns that I think we all share about drainage and the challenges that the slopes on this site present. So I want to make sure that we come through that and also ensure that regardless of what may come of the different parcels, whether they be developed by the applicant or sold to developers or landowners for their own development, that the planning that we do here now is carried through to project completion. So I guess my question at this time is, I'll pose it to the board as well as Laura. What do we think about the sufficiency of a basic stormwater pollution prevention plan, given that we're expecting over an acre of disturbance?
So thankfully, there's actually, like, it's not an interpretation. It's actually prescriptive by the DEC, and you have to meet those regulations specifically. Once it's over an acre, there's certain times that you have to get a basic and certain times that you have to get a full. Once you're over 5 acres, it's always a full. But I think that because it's a single family residential home, you know, there's an appendices within the MS4 permit that we have, or somewhere. The state engineers know this way better than I do, but essentially it's not a gray area. Like, it'll fall under whatever prescription the DEC says. And our engineer had already looked at this outright and felt that it would probably fall under a basic, but his engineer, Joel's engineer, Advanced Engineering, also reviewed that requirements of the DEC and presented a basic. It will still be reviewed by the town designated engineer. So to Mr. Barash's concern about having it in writing and having, you know, somebody's name to it, that will be occurring. We didn't have the SWIP until this afternoon, but we will refer it to both our engineering department and the town designated engineer to ensure that it does meet all the criteria, that a basic SWIP is sufficient, and, you know, put in writing that, you know, we don't have any concerns after we review all the data that the applicant has provided. And we've done quite a bit of site reconnaissance. The engineers, I think all 3 of the engineers have been out there a couple of times. So there's a lot of boots on the ground on this project as well, which is helpful.
Great, and that's Weston and Sampson, I believe, is who's going to be the town designated engineer. Is that correct, Laura?
That's correct.
Okay.
Laura, this is Joel. It's also notable that my property is a lot lower than the properties across the street. So water does flow downhill. So pretty intuitive that this property won't, the hydrology of this property won't affect higher elevation properties.
Yeah, the engineers have noted that it's a small watershed in that area. But you still have to, like, do all the engineering. And like we had said, we thought it was going to take a little bit longer. We did receive it today, but we haven't had a chance to look at it. And we will refer it to our town designated engineer. So it essentially gets, you know, a full review by the town designated engineer. And then our engineers double check that. And then it comes, you know, back to the planning board for that. So hopefully the stormwater gets a super thorough review in the town of Niskayuna, because we just don't have great soils, and that's just the way it is. So we have a whole process for it.
Okay.
This is just something that I had put in the email to Joel, is that you know, our tree code requires 2 street trees per lot. I know we're going to try and save as many as we can with the driveway, but it may also be worth noting that we would also be planting 2 per lot in the right of way. It'll get bigger over time.
Those are shown on the drawing, by the way.
Oh, great. I did not see that, but that's good. Like,
That's on the engineering drawing.
okay.
sheet two.
Joe, can you share with us about your plans? Are you planning on building on this yourself, or is there anything you can?
No, actually, there's a family, a Niskayuna family, that there's two brothers and a brother-in-law, and we have them under contract, contingent upon subdivision approval, that are going to build their family homes there. They're already in Niskayuna. They're just moving all together. And, I've talked to them and walked the site and got their commitment to cut as few trees as possible too. So, and
All three, for 3 lots?
yeah, it's contingent upon me putting the driveways in the culvert pipe in too. So, I kind of have control over the driveway and the house clear. So it's contingent upon me roughing in the driveways, clearing the location for the houses, and, of course, me putting in the new driveway for lot number 4.
All right. Any other comments at all on this right now? So, sounds like, Mr. Partland, you're suggesting that we get some preliminary engineering information before we call for a resolution. I know our next meeting is January 25th, and then on February 8th, I believe. So I guess your recommendation is that we wait till we get some preliminary information and then take it from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that
That's
doesn't really
correct.
impact ways, Kevin, because I can't get in there and do the site work now with the frozen ground. So, I'm not in a huge rush now.
Okay. Well, that's nice to hear. Usually it's always the other way around, right? So good. Well, that works out great then. We'll get some engineering information. We can discuss it and at the 25th, January 25th meeting. And if it's adequate and we don't receive any additional surprises or any additional concerns from the public, then we can take it from there and may possibly have a resolution for the February 8th meeting. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McPartland or for the applicant or planning office regarding this project? No? Okay. All right. Then
Sorry, Kevin. I did want to mention that Joel has been, he has been, like, he raised the home and he's working on the foundation. He can explain it better than I can. But I was explaining to someone else who lives in a historic home today about the staircase on the inside. This house has a staircase that it comes from 2 different sides of the home and kind of meets at a landing and then goes up to the 2nd floor. The person was kind of a historic expert and was very excited by that because it's not that typical and it's really fancy and it's something very cool to have in an old home like that. So again, I'm just very glad that the developer was willing to try and preserve this home because I do think that it's such an asset to the town of Niskayuna. It has some really cool stuff on the inside.
that's great. Yeah, thank you, Laura. And thank you, Joel, for doing that and for turning over information from the residents that was found to the town historical committee. We appreciate that. Okay. Again, hearing nothing else on this subject, we'll move on. Thank you, everyone. Next up being 2207, 2209 Knott Street site plan approval and a special use permit for tenant change, which is the broken in, of course. I guess what we'll do is we'll start out with Mr. D'Arpino, and I know that Mr. Henry, the town planning office, has done a lot of work on looking at parking, and sooner or later, whenever Dave's ready, we'll have Mr. Henry jump in and summarize what he's done for us. Okay.
Okay, so since our last meeting, the town board has given Mr. Nicky approval of the use for the space. In that time, Mr. Nicky has gone out on his own and has collected some information on parking at different times of the day and evenings. He's taken counts of the number of cars that were there parked. And in addition to that, Mr. Henry has done a pretty extensive overlook and overview of all of the parking spaces that are along the Knott Street corridor, basically from the end of the co-op parking lot all the way down to the west end of Lang's Pharmacy and around to the back end. So there was quite a bit of information that was exchanged in the last couple days, and I know that parking is definitely a concern, not only for residents, but also for the business owners in that area. So we wanted to take a really, really, really thorough look at this. And I think we've got some really, really good data. So right now, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Mr. Henry just to give a brief overview of the information that he was able to develop. And then I think we should engage Mr. Nicky in the information that he found.
Okay, thanks, Dave. What we did is we just looked at, everyone I think is aware that this is a pre-existing non-conforming site, the Co-op Plaza, as we've called it in general. The buildings date back to approximately the 1940s, and the town zoning code didn't come into effect until 1971. So they significantly predate the code. So that's a huge factor, as Laura could explain more, the fact that it's pre-existing non-conforming. What we also wanted to do is just dive into the code and the available parking throughout the plaza and just see how they compared, just kind of as a reference point. So after going through that in some detail, we looked at each of the 5 buildings. We looked at the square footage of each building, the use of each building, which becomes significant. And from that, there's a parking demand or requirement for each building according to the code. So we looked at all of that, and we found that should the broken in go through, the demand for parking actually goes down by approximately one parking space for that building, as opposed to its most recent condition when it had Lang's Pharmacy, the Niskayuna Barber, Dave's Beauty Salon, John's Barber Shop, and Maria's Alterations. It had 5 businesses in that one building. The way the code is written, that has a significant impact on driving up the number of required parking spaces. And, you know, we can dive into this in quite a bit of detail if we would like, but what the gist of it is, going to the restaurant actually reduces the required parking on that building by 1 parking space. The whole Co-op Plaza in general, if you looked at today's code, we don't quite have enough parking there per today's code. I think we have 115 parking spaces in the whole plaza, and code, as we've looked at it, is requiring 127 spaces. So again, because it's pre-existing non-conforming, that doesn't really define anything, but it just kind of gives us a reference point. So I guess just as a top level summary, the result of diving through all the code shows that we don't quite have as much parking as code would allow, because the buildings were all constructed before the code was enacted, and the restaurant actually reduces the demand by 1 parking space. So I don't know if Laura or Dave, if you guys or Kevin have any other specific points you think we should bring forward.
Well, I mean, I've got some things I'll summarize later on, some of my thoughts, but I'd like to, hear more from the board or the applicant actually, at this point in time.
Clark, I just want to make sure the reduction by the 1 parking space is because 2 businesses have now gone to 1.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the code is it treats different businesses differently in the requirement. A restaurant and the co-op being a food market, their parking demand is strictly a function of the square footage of those stores. But a convenience store or a retail or service shop, which the barber shops would be, etc., they have a requirement that's based on square footage, and they need a parking spot for each presumed employee, and they cannot have less than 4 parking spaces. So if you were really strictly applying the code, places like Maria's Alterations in the back, even though it's a very small business, would have to have that minimum amount of 4 parking spaces plus 1 parking space for an employee. So when you put multiple businesses in one building, especially if they have that requirement for a retail or service shop, the parking demand kind of per code jumps up, you know, rather quickly if you were applying the code to the bill.
Yeah, and just in summary, it seems based on the nonconformance that the Broken Inn restaurant will be facing a 1 reduction in the parking spots, right? That from what is currently there. However, the bigger issue is the fact that if we remove that nonconformance view, there's still a deficit of up to 12 parking spots in that for the co-op area, right? The 127 minus 115.
Yes, yes. So it would actually, with the Broken Inn, it would drop down to a need for 126, and you'd have
126
yeah,
minus
correct.
115. So if the Broken Inn project did not come along at all, we'd still be dealing with the nonconformance and with a deficit in the parking relative to our current code.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yep.
And it also kind of brings up the subject of if let's say if another barber shop or something were going in there, you would still basically have the same situation that you know, the restaurant is not exacerbating the situation in any way. It's actually reducing it by a spot per the, you know, the way the code happens to work.
So Clark and Laura, this is a question. I don't recall ever encountering it in any of my time on the planning board. A responsibility to correct the nonconformance that was grandfathered in based on the age of the code and the age of the nonconformance. I would think that responsibility falls on the town, doesn't it, as opposed to any specific property owner or provider? Is that statement true, false, unknown?
I think it's site specific. Typically, a nonconformity it can be a question for the zoning board, because you know sometimes a nonconformity creates a situation where if you're increasing the problem of the nonconformity, you know you need like a use variance or something like this, and we see it fairly regularly with lot line adjustments where sometimes there's a nonconformity that's pre-existing on a side of the property where they're not doing a lot line adjustment. So to the extent that the nonconformity isn't being made worse, the town typically just allows it to be because it's essentially grandfathered in. If it is being made worse, then it triggers some kind of zoning relief, in which case the town has to take into account the fact that imposing the zoning on these properties over time may have created a hardship that's not self-created. And that's something that you look at on a case-by-case basis. For this project specifically, it's really difficult because it's a mixture of ownership of right-of-ways. But I think that we can all agree that to the extent that the town can do projects within its right-of-way and within its ability and within a funding constraints that are currently, you know, felt across the whole entire nation, that anything the town can do to support this, you know, town center overlay with a deficit of parking that has existed for, you know, since forever, anything the town can do within its power and its right-of-way is definitely something that we would want to encourage the town to do. Does that answer your question?
So not exactly, but I mean, my key question was, you know, does the town have a responsibility in here to actually make certain changes to get the parkings to correspond to the current code, right? And
well, I mean, no, but anything that they can do to make it better would be good.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions on the board? Or Mr. Nicky, would you like to respond at all or add anything to that?
I'm happy to add and answer any questions. I'm actually enjoying listening to you discuss this, and I'm far more educated as to the parking situation right now on this project than I ever have been in any before. And it's funny, as I walk the neighborhood between my house and that house, and we start talking about buildings in the 1940s and code in 71, I walk by single car garages in every single house and recognize how much things have changed in that at a time when people were building their homes, they were walking to places like this, or there was only one car in the family. All that said, in the package that I submitted, hopefully, and I can go through that in detail if you want. I know I sent it on Friday. I believe that we complement the other businesses in terms of timing, et cetera. And that's also illustrated in Mr. Henry's document. Our hours of operation truly do complement the others. So I recognize the need to look at code. 7 spaces, about 4 spaces for this business or 7 spaces for that business, and I'm happy to participate in that discussion. But at the times where we would possibly need more parking than the code requires, it exists. And I think as somebody who's going to make an investment in this corner, that's good to hear. I'm far more confident after all of this study has been done that we have what's needed to not just meet the code, it's all that's nice, but to service the customers, not just of my business, but of the surrounding ones, than I was, when this project began. So, again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we've most everything was submitted either in the package that I sent on or the video that we provided.
Yeah, I think we should at least make note of that, because that wasn't included in the packet for the public because it was received afterwards. The package was issued. So what you did send, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically a link to a YouTube video. You spent several days just kind of like walking around and getting a picture of at least a snapshot in time of what the parking situation was like. And you also forwarded on a list of, I don't say list, document which contained some feedback. And I believe that was from I would assume a Facebook group. I don't know which one it was.
Yeah, it's similar. It's called the Nextdoor app, which I'm just now becoming familiar with here. There's been a lot of discussion on that platform about the project, but without being solicited, I had over 40 people reach out saying, I'm looking forward to walking to this business, or this is walkable from my location. And while it was something that we hoped people would do and still hope people would do, having that many people connect with us and say, look, I live within walking distance, I'm looking forward to patronizing this business, reinforce that. And I also provided a document that just between Baker Avenue to the north and west, Grand Boulevard and Van Antwerp to the south, and Balltown Road to the east, which is anyway, based on your gate, between a 5 and 7 minute walk. There are 900 residences within walking distance of this proposed business, and it's actually a bigger number than I had thought when we began this project. But it's ahead of time, and I'm glad I know now.
Yeah, the comments that you forwarded obviously were positive. Was that edited to eliminate any of the negative comments, or is that all the data that you provided to us?
Well, there are 700 or 800 comments on this social media platform related to this project. It kind of took on a little bit more of a life of its own. All I did was provide every comment that used the word walk or walkable in there. But you'll find, if you're on that app, and again, it's free, it's public, obviously. And I block people's names for confidentiality, I guess, if you will. Yeah, I would tell you that just as you've seen with signatures I provided or people who've written in both here or to the town board, we've had overwhelming support, which is, especially considering the idea of opening up an eating establishment at this time in history it's comforting.
Yeah. One thing I'd just like to point out, obviously this board already recommended to the town board that they issued a special use permit. So we support the concept of a restaurant, walkable, and the what it would bring to the area, which we believe is lacking, a neighborhood type establishment, locally owned, et cetera. But now we have the tough part of, approving a site plan and change a tenant that works for everybody and minimizes any future problems for, you, so your business can be successful, for the other businesses within the plaza, for the town board, for ourselves, so that, we want it to be successful, and that's why we're taking such a hard look at the parking. As you
Sure, and that's why the comments I provided are all relative to walking, if you will, because we could talk about somebody who's looking forward to having a gluten-free meal. I didn't include that. I just wanted to make sure that you had the best and most thorough snapshot of not just what is required from the code, but what is anticipated by the patrons, in their own words.
David, I don't want to interrupt you if you have something specific you want to talk about. I got a couple other things I'd like to discuss if you, but I would yield to you first, though.
Thanks, Mr. Walsh. I thought that what Mr. Nicky prepared on Friday was pretty thorough. The visuals were very good. I don't use many of those social media platforms, but I do know that they have been heavily used by a lot of residents, specifically in the Old Niskayuna area, and just talking with other neighbors that you see periodically. As far as the parking in that area, I do agree with Mr. Nicky. I think that the hours of his business operation do complement some of the other businesses that are there, specifically the ones on the west end or in the center of the plaza. It's pretty imperative that he's got open communication and dialogue with those other business owners or the tenants in those buildings, as to trying to keep the parking concentrated in areas where it won't compete for parking spaces. There will be some overlap of hours, but there's also a good deal of time where there's going to be businesses in that plaza that are going to be closed when he's going to be the only one open. So I think between the information that we got this past week, and specifically with what Mr. Henry has really delved into, there's going to be specific times where parking would be a premium, and there's going to be a lot of other times where I don't think parking is going to be an issue at all. That's just my opinion on what I've seen so far.
So on that note, I have one additional question, and it's either to Clark or to Mr. Nicky. I was trying to pull this out. So we've identified, Clark, in your analysis, you identified 2 key time periods where there'll be peak demand, right? The 3 to 6 on the weekdays and the, I think, 10 to 2 on Saturdays, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Do you have any idea what during those time periods specifically, what the count of the demand might be? So I didn't look at the YouTube thing that you provided, Mr. Nicky, but from a perspective of counts, do we think we would actually exceed the count required for the non-conforming use, the non-conforming parking?
So I'll look at those things separately. If I look at prime hours, even though I have overlap in time at say 3:30 or 4:15 with other businesses, that's not when I have high volume time, if you will. In the restaurant business, I'm really looking between 5:30 and 7:30, since we're not open for lunch during those days. And at that point, especially if you have been there and looked around or take a look at the video, obviously, Lang's is closing, the parcel store is closing, the liquor store will have some traffic, but even Co-op starts slowing down. I didn't realize myself, once 6 o'clock hits, Co-op really does slow down quite significantly. But I would tell you, in what I would continue to be my peak hours of 5:30 to 7:30, Monday through Friday, and then I would say probably from those same times on Saturday and Sunday, maybe a little bit earlier on Sunday, where again there's a plethora of parking on that day. I truly don't. I don't foresee, in both my time on the ground, looking around in the past week or two, and the description and chart that Mr. Henry's given me, that we would ever find ourselves in a situation where someone wants to park in that plaza and can't find a space.
Yeah, my comment on that is that the histogram, it's helpful that Mr. Henry put together, and I agree with Mr. Nicky. I think the time I have concern with is around the 5 o'clock period. Also during the week, if you have a good business there, and it's going to be highly desirable, and we do have 2 large employers in the town of Niskayuna, the Corporate Research Laboratory and the Knowles Atomic. And I know from working at both of those establishments, a lot of people like to get together after work, and where do you go? And in Niskayuna, there wasn't many choices. I mean, there are some choices, don't get me wrong, and they're good businesses. But I could foresee, you know, several employees wanting to go to your establishment, and of course, everybody's going to take their own car because they took their own car to work. So I could see a potential problem around, you know, 4:30 to 6 o'clock time frame when people are stopping at the co-op to do some shopping or whatever. Also, but of course, you know, that would, you know, it's again highly desirable to have that opportunity to have that business there. But I think it would be a challenge at certain, you know, couple hours a day at certain times, maybe later in the week, Thursday, Friday kind of thing, also Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I think that's the primary concern. But the positive note is, as Mr. DiArpino stated, and yourself, Mr. Nicky, is that it is complementary. It isn't like another business is taking up all the square footage and it's competing directly all the hours. This is offset a little bit, which does make it more palatable for me. So it is helpful. Okay.
All right.
Some other comments that I think we're going to need to discuss sooner or later, because again, this isn't just parking, and we'll get back to that in a moment, but it's also site plan application, right? And I did get down there a couple times, and I walked around extensively earlier this week, which I ran into Mr. Nicky, but just my timing was a little bit off. I know the plan, talking to Mr. Henry quite a bit about this stuff. A couple things that we got to, you know, worry about, and I don't know if we need to resolve, but snow storage. You know, it all sounds good. Pretty messy down there after the, you know, the large snowfall that we had, and obviously that would impact parking for all the businesses within the co-op plaza there. And I don't know if there's an answer to that, or it's every man for himself down there, or whether it's coordinated or not. But snow storage could be it could impact parkability, I guess. Striping, you know, of the perimeter of Lang's Pharmacy. You know, was faded, and I think that was a comment we made when there was an application, I believe, to combine some of that square footage. And that was one of the comments we had back then, is you know, to restripe that area so we can clearly define the parking spots that's worn, you know, and it's hard to see visibly. And then the other thing that I thought of walking around and taking a look is garbage collection. A lot of the businesses, depending on the type of business, you generate garbage, right? And I would assume that with the restaurant, you know, bar, you may have. I guess you'd have some recyclables. I guess you would store maybe inside, but as far as the garbage, what was your thoughts on that, Mr. Nicky? What was your plan there? You're on mute, sir.
I'm sorry about that. It really will be dictated based on how much garbage we're generating. We don't want to have any issue in terms of garbage sitting outside for a period of time. We don't want to have any issue in terms of rodents or pests or bugs or that sort of thing. If it's a matter of having twice a week trash pickup, then certainly we can do that. There's an area at the back of our building where there are some trash cans currently for the existing tenants. We'd want to make some room, and I think there's room to be made there to accommodate our trash needs. But I certainly don't think we're going to generate more garbage than a grocery store, for example, would do. And just, you know, as demand, as demand sets for trash to be picked up, whether it's once a week, whether it's twice a week, we're going to do that. We want, you know, it's not just for the purpose of this board, but we want to have as welcoming an environment as possible where people aren't looking at garbage outside, where they don't smell something unfriendly as they're walking to and from your establishment. So yes, in terms of removing the garbage, it'll be on at a bare minimum as needed basis, but certainly as needed based on the idea that we don't want it on the property if we don't have to have it there.
I understand that, but was your thought you're going to need a dumpster, or are you going to increase the number of cans that are there? I think there's like 3 cans back there now.
So we would need a minimum of 2 trash cans of that size, and then 1 that's a recycling bin. If there's space for a dumpster, or if we, you know, are able to speak with, you know, our neighbors to utilize their trash and contribute financially to whatever their trash bill as well, so that to not need additional footprint, then we can certainly, you know, have that discussion as well. I will tell you, there are 5, I believe, building owners in total in the plaza, 4 of which who have been, you know, extremely helpful, and I've sent over those letters. Obviously, 1 who's not a large fan of the project, and that's fine. But I believe, you know, we've shown, if nothing else, the ability to work with our neighbors, and we'll do that whether it has to do with parking or trash removal, illumination of, you know, signage, things of that sort.
All right. I mean, we already discussed, you know, that Architectural Review Board would be at least consulting on this project. You know, and, you know, stray lighting, those are things we, you know, we feel that are easily resolvable. Signage, we know we can get through all that. And obviously the long pole in the tent is, you know, the parking, and that's why the trash is important, because it could impact parking.
Sure.
Businesses doing well generate more trash. Trash takes up space, you know, hurts parking. You know, that's why I ask, you know.
Sure.
It's a matter of, you know, having more than weekly pickup to minimize the number of cans, and then that's a solution, but it's something we have to watch for, okay?
Sure.
It's
I want the same thing you want.
yeah, it's a tough location, you know, just because of the space. As Mr. Henry did the FAR calculations, you know, again, it's a new standard versus this pre-existing non-conforming uses that we have there. But if it was today, it was, you know, if the co-op come and said, I want to build the co-op and all those buildings there, it would be insufficient by a long shot by today's standards, you know.
And boy, wouldn't we miss the co-op?
Yep. Oh yeah.
So.
Well, the co-op is the one that's the closest, if not conforming, based on, you know, their parking availability and their floor area ratios. They're the other ones that I believe are either darn close or meet the requirement.
Sure.
It's all the other businesses that, you know, are in tandem that are the challenge, you know. All right, I guess I speak enough. How about the rest of the board? Any thoughts on any of what we just talked about, or parking, or any opinions? I'd love to hear them.
I think realistically, as a restaurant business, you more than likely will end up having a dumpster, and I think we need to think about how that can be located in the back. I think it'll either be that, or it'll be almost daily or every 2 day garbage pickup. I think all of our other restaurants have dumpsters, right, Laura? Especially up in ShopRite Plaza.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure about that. I believe so. Mr. Nicky, do you think you could pencil out how the dumpster would fit where the current garbage cans are on the plan, so that if in the future a dumpster was needed, we can just make sure that there's space for it?
Yeah, I'm sure that I can do that. I also can speak with other tenants about shared garbage, things of that
Yeah,
sort.
because that might work really good to have a dumpster for everyone.
That way, there's no additional footprint. And I can also get I can get a quote on daily pickup as well. But again, in terms of me needing to take additional space that doesn't exist currently relative to parking for trash, I simply don't see that is going to be the.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there may be options for trash that won't encroach on parking spaces, but I think it's just a question of looking at it.
Yeah.
And so going back to the parking striping, is that for the spots that are on building 1, would we put that responsibility on Mr. Nicky to get those parking spaces striped and a snow removal area demarcated?
Well, personally, I don't know about the snow. It seems like that's, I don't know what the agreements are between all the businesses down there. Obviously, I think it can be a problem. But I think the striping, I mean, that's the building owner. If Mr. Nicky's a tenant, you know, that's something that, you know, we talked about before with the pharmacy when the last application we had. And remind me, Laura, or remind all of us, the last application was, I think the pharmacy was going to consume some of that square footage and expand. And we had those, we had a, I don't know what it's called, change in tenant, or we had a look at that, right? I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, he did shrink the space that he's taking over from the initial tenant change that was granted. So he's taking over much less space in the back. But we did discuss with him at that time striping. I don't know if it's written into the resolution or not. I could look it up real quickly while you guys keep discussing. But we have typically required restriping, kind of regardless of ownership, on tenant change if we do feel that it's necessary to make sure that the parking is properly delineated. And I don't mean to sound insensitive, but it would sort of be up to the tenant and the landlord to work out who would be responsible for the actual cost of restriping. It's not a whole lot. It's not like resurfacing the whole thing. I remember the ladies that went into State Street to do their hair business. I mean, they actually striped it themselves, like with cans from, you know, Lowe's. It's not impossible to do.
Yeah, I don't want, Mr. Nicky, I don't want you to think we're, you know, singling you out. This is something we talked about with the pharmacy when they had the recent tenant change. And obviously delineation of the parking helps justify, substantiate, all the numbers we looked at. If you have a stray parking, it doesn't help anybody, right?
So
So,
listen, you do what you do. Your questions are far easier to answer than my 6-year-old who wants to know when she can get ice cream, asking me every day, and me going, it'll happen. So you ask away. Go right ahead.
will you have sprinkles?
I never expected to get that from the chairman, but yeah, we'll have sprinkles.
Okay, all right, we're good then. All right,
He's asking for the rest of us.
yeah, there you go. No. Okay. I've got,
So I think we will have some expectation on striping, at least for the ones for building one, correct? And something about a potential location in the minimum for a dumpster, or some other kind of arrangement with garbage. I mean, look, from my perspective, from our code and the pre-existing non-conforming use, Mr. Nietzsche's study, but for me at least, Clark's, Mr. Henry's analysis, I think we've got the data to say that at least relative to the letter of code and non-conforming use, the parking requirements will be met. As a town, and I see, we have a council person, Perez Jack, was online too. We could be running into a significant deficit on parking from a practical perspective in this area, very, very quickly, right? Based on something that's positive for the town, which is amplified usage, even if it's driving customers to that entire area. So it's something that we're going to have to, have some kind of a plan in the long term, immediate term maybe, to address.
yep, that's all fact, right? That's all fact. How about other board members? What's your thoughts on parking? I'd love to hear. Alternates, anyone? No? Okay, I'll tell you, I made some notes for myself. Let me just run down these notes, and all it is just some facts for myself, and then you can tell me if I'm, off the mark or if I missed something, but just kind of summarizing kind of when I was looking through Mr. Henry's stuff and everything I've seen so far, right? So regarding the broken in proposal here. Okay, basically a shopping complex is a pre-existing non-conforming, right? We know that. It predates the zoning. It is what it is, right? Parking is marginal, no matter how you look at it, or inadequate. And that's a function of the design of the complex, again, 1940-ish or whatever. And it's expected probably to get worse before it gets better based on the county proposal. Looking at the parking spaces after the reconfiguration, I think there's a decrease in the parking lot primarily over at the co-op as a result of that proposal. So it's not going to get any better, all right? And that's a fact. Okay, these are facts, best as I know them. There's some opportunities for extra parking in the future. The town, we had a meeting looking at what we can do with the Crescent Road project. Again, these, it's right now it's just in a design stage and it's unfunded, but there's an opportunity there for some existing parking. Ms. King has thrown out the proposal that maybe her lot across the street could be something that could be converted into parking. The county proposal currently shows that as not being parking, as it would be a curb. There's not a curb cut shown. So we would be losing a few parking spots that are currently being used across the street there. But she has thrown it out there to Laura to see if maybe there's funding available, if that's an opportunity for the future. But again, these are all just discussions and they're all unfunded at this point in time. The parking, to my knowledge, is open to all businesses, right? You go, if I'm going to the liquor store and there's a spot in front of the postal store, I'm going to park there, right? So that's just the way it is. Fortunately for the co-op, if you go to the co-op, there's plenty of parking across the street, around the side or in front. And, typically if I go to the co-op, I'm not going to park down near the drugstore to walk up. But I have, if I've only picked up a couple things and maybe if I want to stop in the liquor store on the way by, right? So parking is basically open anywhere you want to park down there because it's not enforced any otherwise. And there's no signage that state that, right? There are 2 empty storefronts in there right now. We also have to recognize the old nail salon, and I think it was a gift shop, bric-a-brac shop, whatever you want to call it. So there's 2 empty storefronts. So this board also has to realize that we may get applications for those 2 storefronts for some type of retail space at, I believe, the 225 parking spot per 225 square foot. And I'll be honest with you, if the broken in goes through, I don't see how we could deny any of those applicants the right to inhabit those based on parking, especially as we go forward with the broken in, right? So, I mean, that's a fact, my view. I mean, we'd have to do tenant change or look at, make sure the business, falls within the current categories of 200 or 225 square foot per parking spot. But nonetheless, I don't see how we could deny businesses from going in there. So, based on the, shopping complex, right? If with Mr. Henry's, if the broken in was not proposed and there was two businesses or businesses were to fill that square footage, it would be a wash as far as parking needed. We come up with a number, maybe one less because of the broken in, but in all reality, let's just say it's the same, right? So take that for what it's worth. The location of the broken in is a benefit, being at the 2207, 2209 on the corner, obviously, because you can park around the side. So that landowner, building owner, it has some benefit based on location, which benefits the restaurant. Obviously, if the restaurant was at where the empty nail salon is, that'd be a nice storefront, but I think it would make it harder to justify the parking there. But again, parking's open to anyone, right? And the thing that I would like to see, and I know everybody would like to see it, would be more of a solid agreement amongst all the business owners down there to understand, the limitations that the complex has, and the understanding that that somebody may park in front of my business, right? I know that you sent Mr. Nicky letters in that say they support, or cut and paste from social media that they support. But personally, I'm one of those people that would like to see the words "I'm okay with parking," which to me is goes a little bit deeper. It's just my personal opinion. Because last thing I want, I'm sure the town board or any members of this planning board is any future problems where we get into parking issues right down there, and we don't want that, and I know you don't, and we're trying to do our best to avoid that, right? And the other thing is, since there's no agreements that help alleviate that concern, and there's no contingency plan. What's the contingency plan if you have a wonderful restaurant and it gets super busy, and during those peak times we run into parking issues, or there's not enough parking. I guess if there's not enough parking, they're not going to go to your establishment. They're going to drive by and say, well, it's too far for me to walk, so I'm not going to go there tonight because I can't get a parking spot. I guess that's hopefully the worst thing that could happen. Hopefully that's not the case. But I don't see any contingency plans if we run into problems here either. So I have concerns, and that's kind of like things in my mind. I just want to get out there for everybody. And welcome to comment on those. Tell me I'm off base or whatever. Right now, where I stand is, I'm leaning toward, agreeing that this will work as a restaurant based on the data that we have, but with the caveat, with those things I just stated. I could feel more comfort if we had some better agreements. I could feel more comfort if we had contingency plans. And we may not have those, right? Again, I think a critical thing is the two open businesses that are there may come back, sooner or later for occupancy, and I think we're going to have to give them the same credibility or the same pass on parking that I think we're looking at here as a result of just the limited parking that we have down there. All right, I know that's a lot to take in, but I've been struggling with this one. I've been working with Mr. Henry on the parking, going around in circles myself here.
Yeah. So Chairman Walsh, I agree with you 100%. Just one last thing. I mean, this isn't a pass on parking, right? It's actually staying consistent with the non-conforming pre-existing usage, right? Yes. And I just do want to reiterate, right, that whether it's Mrs. King's property across the way or some other solution, I think us and the town board does have a responsibility that in some time in the near future, we do need to address the code-based parking requirements for the lot, right? I mean, that's going to make for a successful, CN location where we want it there, right? We know we've been running with a historical non-conforming deficit.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Mr. Walsh, I mean, that is something you mentioned that I did have concerns about as well. I wanted to piggyback on it. I do think it's important, and what Mr. Nitsche has presented us has been good so far as at least many agreements in writing from the other business owners, you know, expressing their support that they're okay with their parking being used. I know just anecdotally, I went to an adjacent municipality earlier today, and they have an issue in this local plaza where there's signage that specifically states that you can't park in front of their store unless you're going to their store. And during prime hours, they even hire somebody to stand outside and make sure that you're going to their shop versus in a nearby restaurant during a prime lunchtime. So it is something that jumped out at me that I don't want anything like that to end up happening in this, you know, in this plaza in Niskayuna.
Yep.
I agree. And it hasn't, and hopefully it won't. I'm glad that I live here versus wherever you happen to be. And that's why I think it's so valuable to have open dialogue between the businesses, and we have that currently, as well as with the neighbors. We can talk about code, and we can have, you know, meetings with the zoning board and recognize the rules and regs, but problems get worked out between business owner to business owner or business owner to resident long before they should ever get to that point. And I think if there's a real value that I personally bring to the table, other than knowing what I'm doing, that's it.
So,
Now, and the Chairman Walsh says, I can't quantify that in the same way that you'd like a written agreement where the liquor store says you can park here. And I think that's a piece of what happens when you have a plaza with multiple ownership. So that if
Yeah.
I had that letter from the liquor store and someone slipped on ice and fell and broke a hip, stating that they were walking on that space on their way to my business and they had given me permission, it becomes a clouded, slippery kind of slope, I think. But again, that's I would again circle back and say, look, the dialogue and I believe mutual respect that I have with the fellow business owners, and hopefully most of them anyway have with me, is going to mitigate that problem long before we hear about it. And even when I spoke to Mr. Henry, there are I think 21 parking spaces next to the Lang's Pharmacy, if you will. And I didn't realize that you would need 5 spaces for John's, for example, where there's only 1 chair in the barber shop or beauty salon. But more or less, if we had to put up 7 signs to say these 7 parking spaces are designated for the broken in, it's simply not a look that I would want, nor do I think the people on this board would want, nor do I think the residents would want to start delineating this parking space for this building, this parking space for this building. Just doesn't seem like the right feel or the look that goes along with the plaza or the community. And again, I think that's all about business owners working together. And I think that's how I've earned the support of the surrounding business owners by already having had these discussions.
yeah, and Mr. Nicky, I don't want you to think that's what I want either. By no means do I want, you know, that's why I'm talking about it. You know, that's exactly what I don't want. And
And you hit the nail on, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you hit the nail on the head when you start talking about people wanting to come to the business, driving by and not being able to find parking and keep going to someplace else. Because long after we're done with this process, I still have that financial investment of the skin in the game that doesn't want to watch business drive away.
Right.
And I truly, genuinely, based on Mr. Henry's study, based on the information that I've sent, I simply don't foresee that. When you take into account how many potential patrons there are, not only potentially on foot, but that have already said they plan to attend on foot.
Yeah, and it isn't just you, by the way, Mr. Nicky. It's, you know, it's all the other stores that, you know, we have to be concerned with, right? If I got to drop off a package for UPS, I don't want to drive by there and say, hey, it's too hard to park around here. I'm going to go over to Union Street and do my business there. I don't want to take any business away from any of the establishments, not just you.
I agree, and I agree, and I don't want to be blamed for that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, so there's a little bit of I guess you have to go by gut on this one to a certain degree, you know. It'd be great, you know, I know you sound like you have a good working relationship with the other business owners. It'd be great, you know, to formalize that in some kind of, you know, committee or whatever you have down there so that you can constantly exchange information, what works and doesn't, you know, on your own. It's nothing that we would, you know, have you do as a result of any approvals or anything, but of course that would be helpful, you know, to keep the communication open between all the business owners or future business owners down there.
Of course.
To prevent problems that somebody would have to deal with, including yourself in the future, you know?
Chairman Walsh, I did have two other things that popped in my head as you were going through your list. One thing the board might want to consider, I think there are something like 10 or 11 of our parking spots are in the back off the alley. It may be worthwhile to put a sign somewhere that says additional parking available in the alley, or somehow coordinate that to be employee parking, or just that a fairly significant number of spaces are pretty well hidden to the average person driving around the plaza. So that might be something to consider. And I think there's still I think there's a bit of a need for coordination, I'll call it, of snow plowing and storage in the plaza. And Mr. Nicky strikes me as someone who could kind of take a leadership role in helping coordinate that, which I feel is necessary. So I'm encouraged by that.
All right, so what do we got for open items? So I guess for open items, we talked about striping. That's something we could always add as a condition in the resolution if we get that far, that, you know, it'd be striped. We'd like to at least have some further information on trash. Take a look, Mr. Nicky, again, at what's behind there. Think about whether it's going to be adequate for you and whoever it currently services. I'm not sure who that is, whether it's Langs or whether it's somebody, residents that may live upstairs, or whose trash it is, but whether trash is going to work. Again, one of the solutions, potential solution, is there's only a few more cans and there's room for it, and you have more than a weekly pickup. I mean, that could solve the problem, or replacement of the current trash cans with a small dumpster that everybody utilizes. But either way, we just don't want to have trash, not only because of the smell or whatever, visible. You just don't want to have it consume any parking either, so we'll take a look at that. And I know we still need to work on signage. You were working with a signage place, right? I can't remember if you were going to update things on that.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I emailed Laura and Clark earlier today about, and it was not terribly long before this meeting, I apologize, about trying to do a site visit. The gentleman who's doing my sign actually got sick, so he was not able to come by the last week or so. But we have a new drawing, and obviously before we're able to get permission, we'll have to present it to you, and we'll do so. We also had reached out to Metroplex, and that's ongoing. It's obviously budget's going to dictate what our options are. So.
Right. And the other item, of course, and Dave, appreciate this, is the Architectural Review Board taking a look at any facade changes and lighting to make sure that it's not intrusive to the neighborhood and looks good there. So I know you already discussed that and you've agreed to that, so that's all good news. So it's just a matter, I believe, getting this all on paper and making sure that all the members of the planning board are on board with the parking as it is. And and again, I believe there's some risk there because it's not going to get any better for a while. Any other thoughts at all from the board? Yeah, okay. How about timetable? How do we stand on timetable, Mr. Nicky? Are we holding you up? We have time for another discussion. What do you think, Dave? Are we ready to try to draft a tentative resolution?
I'm going to abstain from answering that question.
It's never fast enough for the applicants, right? Yeah.
As I just made my 4th month's rent payment, I'm going to abstain.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with putting together a resolution on this. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with the parking situation. I know that it's not going to be ideal at certain times. I'm very hopeful that Mr. Nicky and the other tenants will try to work together and harmonize in there. I mean, there's some really good points you brought up. We do have 2 storefronts that are currently open. I know that both buildings do have owners. They're not on the market. So there's the potential that tenants could come in at any point. And, the other reality is that the parking, even though we've discussed it at length, is that the difference with this parking is that this parking will be more time sensitive because people might be there 45 minutes to an hour and a half, as opposed to the current timetable for somebody parking maybe at Lang's or at the liquor store could be anywhere from a few minutes to 15 to 20 minutes. Co-op probably has people that stay there a little bit longer, but again, this is the types of businesses that were there were continually turning over parking spaces with some frequency. The other reality is that some of the adjacent side streets are going to see cars parked there at peak times, not just for the restaurant, but that happens, during the holiday times, on busy weekends. Sometimes you do get a handful of people that are parking, along Crescent or Via Del Mar. That's just the reality of what may occur occasionally from time to time. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that ever came back to the board, but it is a realistic item that could happen. But with all that being said, I think that with the information that Mr. Henry's drafted up and the other additional information that Mr. Nicky sent on Friday, I would be fine with putting the resolution together as early as the next board meeting.
All right, so what I hear is we'll have a tentative resolution. Is everybody else okay with that? I guess signify, if you're not okay with that, let me know. How's that work? But I think we need to take a hard look at it, and it's not a given, and get a hard look at it and make sure we're comfortable with it. I think we need to include the conditions like the striping, and make sure that, we're okay with, the architect, we are okay with the architectural review board, the lighting, the signage. And if there's any open items, it'll be a condition of the approval to make sure it gets resolved if we're not comfortable with it, for the resolution as an open item, I guess, as a condition, if we don't feel comfortable. All right. And I guess again, I encourage Mr. Nicky, anything you can do to form a bond with the other business owners that's elevated to the point where you can work together, understanding the restraints of that whole plaza. It isn't, just Lang's and your proposal. It's everywhere, and may not get better. Again, as far as the town goes, with the Crescent Street proposal and the things that we'll be working on there. Again, it's not funded, but it does have a good potential of decreasing cut-through traffic over there and possibly adding some more parking. And then I saw the email, Laura, from Ms. King today regarding her lot. And if there's something we can explore there in parallel for the future, maybe Metroplex or somebody can help out. And that would also help alleviate and provide some additional parking to keep this place successful, And so anything we can do. Any thoughts, Laura?
I see Mr. Khan nodding at that. I just wanted to make sure for the, just for anybody who's watching or watches the video recording that we're not reviewing this in a bubble, and we did take a look at what the county's project is and the impact to it, and it is not actually the same. We are losing parking. Specific to this tenant, though, the parking is remaining at 21 spaces. So when we look at this, both, with existing, with future code, and with, the potential changes from the county, this spot specifically is okay per code. You're not creating any violations or anything in that manner, but we are still, with the county project, at least as is planned now, losing parking spaces over and above what we're looking at, for this project. And so I think that just underscores what you just said, and what Jengus was nodding at is that, does the town have to? No, but for the sake of our town center and creating this walkable district and making this heart to our town center overlay district and really bringing together a kind of sense of place and community, I think it's really important, and we've got our work cut out for us to find creative ways to create parking spaces here that can allow for, and to create things like bike racks. Like the Complete Streets has looked at this project a couple of times, not this tenant change. They looked at the county project a couple of times, and they want to see bike racks, and they want to see as much as we can, necking down all those roads and crosswalks and all those things that the county's trying to do to make it more safe and more walkable. So to the extent that the town's got its work cut out to find more parking spots in places that it can, I think it will. And I think, the town is 100% behind trying to create parking there within our right of ways. With the caveat, Mr. Nicky, that probably the town isn't interested in maintaining parking lots in any way. So if we do create these parking lots, it'll very likely and require a maintenance agreement, from the property owners that are benefiting from the parking spaces to maintain them. But I do think that that's, very achievable. And when we're looking through this, and it is really encouraging that you've reached out to Metroplex, because I think if we can create consensus on a whole entire plan with the things that Kevin mentioned, we can definitely make things a lot better.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd like to add, Laura, to what you were saying though, is, if you look at just this parcel, it appears to be compliant, but remember, it's part of the complex. So somebody could park, Mr. Nicky, down there and walk to the co-op also, just as well as they could park in front of the liquor store and walk to your establishment, so it works both ways. You can remember that,
Yep. And I'm not downplaying it, but Clark and I have had long conversations about the parking in this area as well. And one of the charms, although we don't want to take any parking away from the businesses that can work, but one of the charms of this plaza is that it doesn't have a sea of parking in front of it, is that it was created in a time that's very walkable, is that it's situated in a neighborhood and you don't have to cross Balltown Road, and you can trust to send, your children there to go get ice cream because they aren't walking through, they're not walking over a state road. It is something that actually communities strive to create now when they can, and that there is a cost to creating parking spots for the maximum demand. So there is a cost to parking that would allow for cars to have parking at the absolute maximum, but would be empty for most of the time. There's the aesthetic, and there's a burden to the community to have parking for the maximum, right? So I mean, it is a balance of a lot of factors, but I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yep, and we appreciate Mr. Henry's hard work on this. Talked to him quite a bit this past couple of weeks, a week and a half, I tell you that. So we'll have a tentative resolution, is what I hear, and I would ask that, I know the planning department's busy, but please get that out as soon as you can, so we can have really time to make sure the conditions are appropriate, and that we all can buy into this. Okay, and of course, the public's listening. Any other comments are always, we're here to listen. If anybody wants to reach out, always welcome to contact me or the planning office to get a hold of me, whatever. Any input is always appreciated. Okay. Do you have anything else, David or Mr. Nicky?
No, I just appreciate your time and consideration. I know that it's not as cut and dry as perhaps you might like it to be.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned the word gut. The kind of gut feel that I have that makes me willing to make this financial investment, hopefully is the same gut feeling you have that we're going to make it work and it's workable.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else on this matter? Anybody? No? Okay. All right, thank you. And we'll close the discussion on 2207, 2209 Knott Street. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next up we have, 3413 State Street. And this is a site plan application for a tenant change with signage. This is called iFix Pro. Do we have anybody representing the applicant online from I guess it would be the signage company potentially?
No, they are the ones that emailed Clark and I last minute that, again, they have a problem with the technology and aren't able to attend.
Okay.
And I can show the signs quickly, if we give them some feedback.
Yeah, why don't you pull it up, Laura? I did get, obviously get a chance to look at the agenda statement and everything, and just trying to find my notes here. I mean, this was the old Great Clips, I guess it was, and there's 2 other tenants in this building complex, and so this is basically going to be a tenant change, but we haven't received, my understanding is, anything specific to the needs of the business at all, but it is an appropriate business for the location. And then there's the signage, which they want our feedback on, because that's really pretty much all we've got at this point in time, right?
Yes.
And Laura, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the front, we're looking at the front signage there, which is compliant. Basically, it's compliant. And then on the side of the building, which also faces the roadway, which cuts through on the side, is also compliant. The signage, whether you agree with the style is another thing, but it is compliant. And then Laura's showing the back of the building, which is if it were allowed, it is not compliant based on the size. And B, it's up to us to determine whether it should be allowed. Because if you look at the site plan, it seems like there's not an immediate roadway there. So my first instinct looking at this was that this seems like a bit of a stretch to have that additional signage on the back of the building. And I don't believe the other two businesses in that building have signage on the back. I didn't get a chance to get over there today. You know, Laura, if that's a true statement?
They actually do, although it is a ways away to that North End Road. We have traditionally considered it as an internal road, and I believe even Great Clips had a sign here, but definitely both T-Mobile and H&R Block have a sign behind on that facade.
Okay, like I said, I didn't get a chance to get over there today to look. So there is signage for the other two establishments on the back facade then?
So they were granted a variance for that?
No, we have traditionally interpreted that as having a sort of a cross street. There's a road that goes behind it. It's a ways away, but there is, it's sort of a long front yard. We have considered it to be an internal road.
Okay. And this business is obviously can also get a slot in the main Mansion Square monument sign too, right? I mean,
you can't really, for some reason my computer's not loading the whole. Oh, here it is. We consider this here to be an internal road.
Yep. Well, if there's signage on the other two establishments of the building, I think it'd be hard to say that the interpretation would have to change for this applicant. But I would suggest that I don't know the size of the signage on the other buildings, but this should be complementary to that and within the code at a minimum.
Yeah, I agree.
So that would be my feedback to the applicant, if the board agrees, is that take a look at what we got, keep in the ratios or the aspect ratios of that signage, and make sure it's compliant with the code, and there shouldn't be an issue. But as proposed, it's not compliant based on the analysis of the planning department. Right, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's my thoughts.
Laura, did you say, was there anything in the code about the pillbox or like pathfill shaped portion of the sign?
So that's what I was going to bring up, because I remember we had a discussion about the pillbox for the mathnasium, and because we wanted the sign to be cleaner and clearer so you could read it. And actually both this sign and the other sign kind of have that pillbox underneath, which we have discouraged before. I didn't know if you guys had any. I mean, I know we can't push too hard on the aesthetics, but if you guys just wanted to share any thoughts on the aesthetics of the sign, we can certainly pass them on and see what we can do.
Now, there's a difference in the zoning here versus the town center overlay district also,
Yes, that's true. We have much less. I don't actually think we could deny it. We could just pass on to the sign applicant, can you make it simpler? But they wouldn't have to.
Yeah, I think they're trying to describe, you don't have it in front of me, but they're trying to describe what they do there, right? Basically in the sign.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is a completely different zoning district. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But Laura, I just wanted to make sure the other two buildings, the H&R Block that's there, they just have two signs in their building, right?
No, here I'll show you. Actually, you can see it on Google, and I'm fairly certain
Yeah, I'm
that,
looking right now, actually.
Okay, T-Mobile has gone. So H&R only has two because it's in the middle. It has a front
in the
one
middle.
and a rear one. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't show T-Mobile on Google, but T-Mobile has one in the rear as well.
So T-Mobile does have three signs also.
I believe so. I'm
Okay,
not.
I'm having a tough time manipulating Google where I'm sitting here, but
I can double check that building permit while you guys are talking. I love one nice thing about remote. Good luck.
Yeah.
So again, my initial thoughts are that they make it the sign compliant or in keeping with any other signage on the back facade. Does everybody think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I was only checking to see if they have, if they're going to have the three signs while everyone else has two. That's all.
Yeah.
H&R Block, clearly it's just two signs, one in the front and the back. Whatever is the Google image that came up for me here, it doesn't actually have T-Mobile. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the building permit now. What is the address?
3413 State Street.
But it's gotta be in the old garage.
Yeah, here they are. Yeah, here I'll share with you. Hold on. T-Mobile has all three sides.
Yeah, it looks like T-Mobile might have it. I mean, like I said, in the picture I'm seeing it's not, but knowing where they are in the building, it seems like they might have three. So yeah, then Chairman, if that's the case, then I think a conforming third sign, size-wise.
So this is their front, that's their side, and that's their rear right next to H&R Block in the rear. And you can see Great Clips used to have a sign back there too.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing unique then, except for the size of the sign on the back facade.
So let the aesthetics be, and we'll just tell them to bring it into compliance, and then have it on for next meeting as a proposed draft tenant change and sign approval resolution.
I don't see any reason why not. It seems to be pretty straightforward, unless somebody else disagrees, of course. I don't see any concerns, so I'd say so, Laura.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on under discussion. Okay, this one is 2456 Hilltop Road. That's sketch plan application for a 2-lot minor subdivision. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to drive by this one. I did the other day. Basically, proposal to subdivide, and I believe we have the applicant, right? Is it Mr. Sponable? Are you still there?
Hi, this is Chad Pagan from Ingalls. I'm the engineer representing the project.
Okay. I tell you what, instead of me summarizing, why don't you fill us in on the proposal here? Let that do the kickoff.
As you see, we're doing apply for sketch plan. Now, this is a single lot right now, but in 1945, it was filed the subdivision as 2 lots. And the applicant wants to bring back the original lot line from the subdivision from 1945 and make 2 lots out of it. And in doing so, to meet the current zoning code, we're going to have to get some variances for area and side yard setback, because at the time that the subdivision was approved, because that house, the existing home that was on it, was built around the same time the subdivision was done, and there wasn't any, so to speak, zoning rules on setbacks and areas and so forth at the time that house was constructed. So we are going to need some variances on this for area and the side setback for the existing structure. Now, you've probably seen that there's a drainage pipe going through this parcel on the southeast side. Now, I've contacted DPW. They have no record of that. So someone has in the history of this property has put that in on their own. I'm guessing there's a drainage issue on the property, although I didn't witness any myself when I was out there. But on the future development of the lot 5, we're calling it, we would redirect any drainage that's there now that's apparently going in and attaching itself to a catch basin and then into a catch basin in the right of way.
You saying it does go to the catch basin right away now?
Well, there's a catch basin right at the right of way property line, across the front, almost right where the 2 lots, proposed lots, were dividing. There's a catch basin there, and then it ties into the catch basin in the street. Initially, when we got this project, the first thing I did was contact DPW to find out, what kind of easement and so forth. And they have no record of it in there. So obviously this was done without anyone knowing it at some point in the history of this property.
Does that service just this property, or does it service the lots behind, or do we know?
That was hard to tell from when I was out on the field there. I'm guessing that there's a low point in the back because the properties in the back drain towards this lot. So I'm guessing this picks up what's draining onto the lot from the adjoining lots to the southwest.
Gotcha.
Because we left the topography on this, you can see that it goes 458 behind the lands of I can't pronounce the name there.
Yep.
On lot number 4 there behind it, and then it goes 458, 456, 454. So it's draining onto the applicant's property. So I'm assuming that that's why it was put in, whoever did it in the history of this lot. But the applicant wasn't involved obviously at that time.
All right. Is that something that would be allowed these days to have that go into the storm sewer from the property? Just my lack of knowledge.
That's a good question. And I kind of, when I contacted DPW on it, I asked them that, and they didn't have an answer for me.
That's something we'll have to definitely follow up on, because that, obviously impact the buildability of this lot. And obviously if it is picking up water coming off the property behind, construction on this property could have impacts on the neighbors, right? So you have to make sure.
Well, if it was removed, yes, I agree. That's why if we were allowed to develop this, we would probably put another structure in the back right by where the inlet is, and then divert it over towards the proposed property line and run a pipe along the proposed property line and then tie back into where it is now.
Okay.
So that would have minimum impact on development on both lots.
Okay, so Laura, that sounds like or Clark, that's definitely a question for engineering that we'd like to get some feedback on from the town, okay? As we go through the decision process on the subdivision. Because what we're looking at basically is sketch plan approval sooner or later. This is the first time we've seen it tonight. Sketch plan approval, and if we feel it's appropriate, we also have to make a recommendation on the variances. And there's basically, I guess, 3 area variances involved here. You subdivide this property. None of them meet the current R1 zoning requirement of 18,000 square foot. And the 3-car garage on the existing structure is about 7 foot away from the property line. Side yard setback being 20 foot in the R1 zoning district. So you're looking at, an area variance for that. And again, the lot size. These lot sizes are a little bit over 15,000 square feet each as proposed, which is about 85% of the requirement. So, they're close, and they're in keeping with some of the other lots on the street, but not all of them.
So Chairman Walsh, is the sequence of that correct? Don't we first have to assure that there'll be that it'll get a positive conclusion with the ZBA before we approve sketch plan?
From us or from the ZBA?
From our perspective, because I think the key thing is us making a recommendation to the ZBA, right?
Right.
No.
Well, if we have to have sketch plan, if we say that it's appropriate for sketch plan, we're going to have to give a referral to the zoning board of appeals. And my guess is if we say it's appropriate for subdivision, we're going to say it's appropriate the area variances.
Right, because in looking this one over, I'm having a hard time getting a positive answer to our 3 questions that we answer for the ZBA approval. Because these 2 lots will be non-conforming, not just from the setback, but also from the R1 size.
Right.
Right. And
by
so,
today's standard,
yeah. So, from my perspective, I'm not sure if this application is going to meet the requirements for. The ZBA is ultimately the one to decide, right? But I think that that I would find it hard to approve a sketch plan that's actually got non-conformance on it that the ZBA hasn't weighed in on.
well, again, we usually, we have to make a recommendation, right? And
Right.
So, if we feel it's inappropriate, then we're not going to, I know it's kind of a backwards thing, but if we don't feel it's appropriate, then we're not going to give it sketch plan approval. And Laura, you can help me out here, right? If we say sketch plan approval, we're saying it's appropriate, and it's going to be up to the zoning board of appeals to decide for us,
So, because sketch plan approval is actually classification of the subdivision. We haven't traditionally denied the application until you've classified it as a major or a minor. You know, for 2 lots, when you're not doing any utilities, you always have the ability to classify it higher than a minor if you want to, but typically this would be a minor. It's still up to you guys to classify it. But typically we review it at sketch plan, you know, for all the sketch plan requirements. And then if we're okay proceeding from sketch plan to minor, that's when it's denied. That's when you guys do your recommendation to the zoning board. And so typically you've had a decent amount of say before it goes to the zoning board. And then once you've gotten it, like for flag lots and things, once you've gotten it to a place where like you could potentially do a, you know, a recommendation for approval to the zoning board, you've said, okay, we're going to classify it, give it sketch plan approval, and then the next step for it is to get it denied and bring it to the zoning board of appeals. If you guys did I think deny the sketch plan, I'm not exactly sure what the next step would be because we haven't actually done that before, but we'll figure it out for you if you wanted. And I did want to let you know that we have had a call from a neighbor concerned with drainage, and the CAC just looked at it very briefly, just because they only meet once a month. So anytime we can get information in front of them, we would do that. And they were concerned about just precedent in that area because they don't want to see substandard lots, and all the subdivisions we've looked at there before have met or exceeded the subdivision requirements. And they just wanted to be really careful about making smaller and smaller lots going forward, like making these decisions that could be whittling away at, you know, what people are subdividing off.
Yeah. Hey, Laura, this is a little premature, but just thinking this through, and this is for the applicant to come to us if this was even something they would consider. But if the 3-car garage were a 2-car garage, and that and I don't know if it was already discussed, I may have missed it, but would that change us significantly, or the square footage is still the issue?
Still an issue. They're still substandard to the current R1 zoning regulations, whether or not the garage, that's just an extra area variance for a side yard setback on top of the, you know, minimal sized lots.
Yeah, I mean, my major concern is the square footage of the lots. It's actually, the setback is a secondary concern for me.
Yeah. One thing we got to watch though is I believe the lot to the, I think it would be the east of this, there are other lots in that area that, again, pre-existing non-conforming today's standard. I believe there's other lots that are probably about the same size, 15,000, 16,000 square feet.
No, agreed, right? I understand that, Chairman Walsh, right? And I had looked at it, but the key thing is the fact that what we have in front of us would create a new, right, would create I mean, it could be an approved conformance from the non-conformance from the ZBA, but nonetheless, it would be non-conforming for our current code, right?
Right. Hey, Laura, I guess maybe this is a legal question, but if we deny sketch plan or pass on it, whatever word you want to use, would the applicant be able to go to the zoning board of appeals and see if they could get their area variances and then come back to the planning board? Does that make sense?
Paul can jump in here. My guess is no, because you would be taking formal action, in which case the appeal process would be in Article 78. But I'm not sure. Paul could correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to think about it a little bit because the CAC was just very concerned with precedence on this one, which is why since the CAC meeting, I've been exploring it a little bit.
Yeah, my initial, I don't know if Paul heard you or not, my initial concern was looking at it on paper, similar to Mr. Khan's concern, you know, and it's, you know, it's one of those unfortunate things that at one point in time they combined a lot, and this is the problem when you do that, right? Is now you want to get it back to where it was, but now it doesn't conform with the current zoning regulations. If they never combined it and it was an empty lot, it would have came in front of us and it would have been a non-conformance, but I think it would have been easier to swallow. And I think we've had that happen in the past where it was a pre-existing subdivision and we've allowed people to go forward. But again, because it was combined and now being re-subdivided, it makes it more difficult or intricate, you know. And so, it's fair game now. Whereas if it, I guess if it was left separate all these years, it would have been easier, more palatable.
Sure, yeah.
And that's one of the-
Laura, I don't know if you remember this, but they mentioned that the house was constructed prior to the zoning code, somewhere in the 1945, or maybe it was subdivided in 45. The house was built before the implementation of the zoning code. But was the garage altered from a 2-car to a 3-car after the zoning was in place? But because it was one lot, it didn't matter that the garage got wider. Now it seems like you're not exactly rolling the clock back because you've got a wider garage that has created an issue. I can't remember the date of the garage expansion. We seem to think there was a garage expansion.
That's a great comment, Clark, by the way, because if it was originally that home was there and there was no garage on the side and they came in for a building permit, and they said, okay, you're okay because the lot line is 100 foot away, right? 100 and whatever it is feet away. And now here we are going back the other direction again. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if we have the history on the lot or not.
It looks like I just looked up on just on ImageMate on the county records available, and the garage was put on in 1951. So 851 square feet.
Yeah. So also pre-existing then, right, Laura? Yeah. Thanks, Denise, or Daisy. Thank you.
But the lot was made into one lot in 1945. It was said, right? Is that?
I don't know that we have a form submitted. I can also actually the website that Daisy's on, we can double check that too. But sometimes like lots were actually sort of combined at subdivision to build bigger homes or like to add, if you look at like old Rosa Road, like those lots are only like 20 feet wide. And so like every single lot over there is the combination of 4 or 5 lots that were made during that subdivision. Not sure why they made those lots so small. It's also true of like the Middle Street, William Street.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I guess you got some feedback there. I'm not sure from where.
I'm sorry.
You have a phone on along with the computer. You might have to turn the volume down on one of them.
Sorry about that. This is Kevin Sponable. I'm the owner of the property. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the history of the property or not. It was owned by Frederick White. He was part of Knowles Atomic Division. He actually worked on the atomic bomb. We actually found pins and certificates for that, as well as we found multiple properties that he had purchased around that time with surveys showing that they were individual lots available for building. And he had purchased these properties in order to build additional houses on them. Again, the original property was actually built without the garage. The garage was added later within the conformities of the town of Niskayuna. And the subdivision still, when I actually came to Niskayuna, I actually went to the engineering department to have them look at that culvert. They had no idea what it was. They said it was not part of your plan. It was done by Frederick White. The lot itself was designed as a separate lot and is still set as a separate lot. It was Niskayuna that put the lot together. If you look at the deed on the property, it doesn't show as one lot. It shows as 2 separate lots. Niskayuna put the 2 lots together when they were purchased. So, I believe the property falls within the realm of being able to be split.
Deeds do typically have, especially in Niskayuna, but across New York, have.
We need everybody to mute. We got a lot of feedback right now, please.
Yeah, whoever's on the phone has to mute the phone. Or I can mute it actually.
No, my phone's off.
So the it is typical in Niskayuna to have multiple parcels on a single deed. That doesn't make them legally, by our zoning code, multiple parcels. And this is legally one lot. And I'd say that has been legally one lot for a very long time. Because if you look at the way the tax parcel ID number is written, it doesn't have any denotation that it had been changed over time. So it's not untypical to have multiple parcels in a single deed. That happens throughout subdivisions as they develop, as it happened over time. But legally, this is just one lot.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, if it's one lot, then we're faced with a subdivision. That's an interpretation. Mr. Sponable, I don't know if you have any other comment on that. You're welcome to provide any information you may have. You can hear me? You're on mute, Mr. Sponable.
Oh, sorry. It was two lots under the title search. It was two lots under the deed. I just assumed it was two separate lots. If you were to file a deed, my understanding, if I was to buy a property and it filed with a deed and it was filed under one lot or changed to one lot, wouldn't that deed have to be changed to make that one lot and not be two separate lots? My understanding is that in fact, the original property, when you go back and if you go back and look at the drawings for 2456 Hilltop Road, you won't even find my house. You'll find somebody else's property there. And then when they do find it, it's just a sketch drawing of the property. That's what the town has. The survey that you have now is the updated survey that I paid to have done to find out exactly, because I was under the impression when I purchased this property, it was two lots, because that's the way it was in the deed and everything else. In fact, even if you look at the drawings, the neighbor's lawn care service or lawn work actually encroaches onto my property. So the property lines there were not being followed as well. You know, so I'm just trying to fix this house up. My understanding is, and from the neighbors that I spoke with that walk down the street daily and run down the street daily, they're approving of everything that I'm doing with the house. If you drove by, you can see the improvements. If you haven't driven by, come by. I'll show you the property. I'll walk you the property. I'll tell you exactly what we want to do, and it meets everything. Oh, sorry. It meets and it conforms pretty much with everything within the development, short of my house being bigger and brick and everybody else's house being vinyl.
So it sounds like I don't want to say disagreement. We probably need you're saying that it was two separate lots based on the title search and information, and
I can provide that. I can provide that to you.
Yeah, I think if that's your position, I mean, we need somebody to take a look at it and clarify, because otherwise there's not a subdivision. We're not looking at a subdivision. We're looking at basically our recommendation on area variances. So we need to make sure, whatever that is, Laura,
Can you pull up the original lot of 254 Hilltop, and it's a hand-drawn, pencil-drawn lot. And then when I asked, and if you asked for the drawings for lot 5, you guys don't have them, because you don't keep drawings on private lots. Because I specifically went to the town of Niskayuna first before I went down this process of getting this property surveyed and everything else. And when I went into the building inspectors to get my permit and everything else, again, the first property they brought up wasn't even my house. It didn't even fit the the property outline of my house. The second one they brought up was just a pencil drawing of my lot, which is lot number 4. When I asked for the property drawing of lot number 5, Niskayuna does not have a record of the property drawing of lot number 5. Now, there should be something, because in 1951 or whenever that property was purchased, you should have that documentation to show that it was either a single lot or a double lot.
Well, when they did pull it up in the office, did it show lot number 4 and the area of both lots combined?
And I was told Niskayuna did that for the convenience of taxes, instead of providing 2 separate tax bills, because it was owned by the same person and it was 2 lots next to each other. They combined the lots themselves to make their life, the deed and the title are still 2 separate lots. If it was 1 lot, then according to my understanding, and I'm a layman, I don't even, you know, I just kind of want to try fixing this house up and move on. Neighbors are happy that I'm doing it. But under my understanding, the deed tells you what your property is, not the town, not the taxes. When I buy a property, it's based on the deed. And for me to get title insurance, which is conveyance, I have to get conveyance title insurance. For me to be able to sell that property, I need title insurance that says the same thing. And the title insurance and the deed says it's 2 separate properties. It specifically states lot 4 and lot 5. And it gives the dimensions of both.
Respectfully, the planning department has looked at this and it is a single lot. I'm not sure where this conversation is going. We could have it offline, but I don't know that it's, you know, particularly pertinent to the plan review.
I'm just asking because, like I said, if you look at the,
if there's a dispute, we just need to be resolved, so we know what to do with the process, right? That's all I suggest, you know.
So if I provide you with the deed and the title insurance that shows it's 2 separate lots, where do we go from there?
No, I'm not the expert there, so.
Who should we bring that to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, it's normal.
Okay.
It's multiple parcels, and title insurance will cover all of the parcels encapsulated in a deed. But if you look at this parcel number, it has been a single parcel since the beginning of time. And the reason that the building department has no separate
What time?
lot 5 is because it was never 2 separate parcels. This is typical of property in the town of Niskayuna that, like, if you look in these subdivisions where they created these tiny lots.
Well, if I show you a bill of sale from person buying lot 5, Frederick White buying lot 5, does that make it a separate parcel?
Sir, the property has been a single parcel within the town of Niskayuna for a very, very long time. And it has been treated as such. If there is no lot 5 when you're looking through our records, and the taxes have been done that way, and building permits have been reviewed that way.
Okay.
And the relief that you're now seeking is based on the town reviewing that parcel as a single parcel, you know, since 1971 or whenever all of those things have taken place. And it is important that the planning board understand that, you know, during the initial subdivision, there were 2 lots, you know, on the initial subdivision. Over time, you know, a single house.
Hey, you just said there wasn't. It was never. You said it was never 2 lots. It was always 1. And now you're saying it was 2 lots but changed.
All right, excuse me, sir. Right. So the bottom line here is that the planning official or code enforcement person, Laura, has made the determination that this is 1 lot.
Okay.
And as a planning board, we have to take that from her. If you're disputing that, I'm not sure, you know, what the action would be.
No, not. She just said it was always 1 lot and then just said it was 2 lots turned into 1. I was just asking what the difference was.
Yeah, I just
If
don't want
I
to.
may interject briefly, I just want to also, I wanted to point this out sooner. Mr. Sponable, it seems, may have jumped into this conversation halfway through and missed some of the discussion regarding the burden that this project has to move forward with the zoning board, a separate
Right.
entity. I want to make sure, Mr. Sponable, you understand that there are several area variances required to construct.
I understand that, but it was also the reason I jumped in because they said if it was one parcel and you guys here decide that it is one parcel, then it doesn't go to the zoning board.
That's not necessarily true.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's again, I am new to this. All I'm trying to do is fix this up to make it right the way it should be.
And you've made a lot of progress to
other-
that end. Now, along those lines, I am curious, Mr. Sponable, it would appear that you've done some clearing on the site that is intended for this proposed new home.
Yes, I did. I cleared the whole, most of the lot. Yes, I did. And when I called a Niskayuna tree service, and I can give you their name if you want to hold on and I can look it up, but he lives in Niskayuna. I asked him about whether or not he needs a permit to cut down trees, and he said no, he did not. And as the trees were being cut down, I actually got a call from somebody who said that they were actually from the town of Niskayuna and that you guys had an ordinance saying that you could not clear 10,000 square foot of property. My first question to them was, well, how much property do I own? And they couldn't tell me how much property I could own. So I said, okay, so for the next question then, let's say I own more than 10,000 square foot of property. How many trees do I have to leave on that property? And again, that person could not answer that question. So I went back to the person who was cutting down the trees, and I explained to him that I received this phone call from, I'm going to say, he said, hi, my name's Jim from Niskayuna. Do you know we have an ordinance that you can't clear cut 10,000 square foot worth of trees on your property? Which I had no idea because I paid a licensed and insured tree service person, showed him my property, told him what I want done, and he said no problem, he would take care of it. He said no permits were needed. I can get Mike Casella, I believe it's Mike Casella. I can give you his name and number if you'd like. But he is a Niskayuna resident.
Well, he's a subcontractor to you. You're the property owner, so the responsibility, in my view, would be with you.
That's not true. If I have an electrician come in and cut my property or do electricians, I cannot pull a permit for that. They have to.
But if you pulled a permit for the tree clearing,
No, I did not pull a permit for the tree. I asked him and he said no permit was needed. And I actually am in my permit for the property. They didn't mention any permit was needed for that.
Okay, well, it is what it is now, so we have to deal with this on a go-forward basis, and the application that we have in front of us is for a subdivision of one lot into two lots, and both lots, as a result of the subdivision, will be non-conforming to our ordinance. They'll be smaller in size than what's currently allowed in the R1 zoning district. There's a setback issue because of the garage proximity to the new building line of the proposed lot. I guess it would be lot number 5. So those are the issues, right? So it's for this board to decide whether we're comfortable with the subdivision, and if we're comfortable with the result of the subdivision, which would be the need for the area variances to allow that to go forward. So that's a board discussion and a board decision. So that's where we're at. I've driven by and taken a look at the property, just the other day. There are some homes that are about the same size lots, it appears, for the limited information that I have in the street. But then again, we have a garage now which is within the setback on the side yard, and we're proposing lots that are non-conforming. Now, it'd be great if there was enough room to have one of the lots conforming and minimize the variance, but that's not the situation here. If you were to make the existing home lot bigger and the proposed lot 2 smaller in order to solve the side backyard situation, then you wouldn't have the 100-foot of frontage that's required in the R1 zoning district. So no matter how you cut it, there's going to be deficiencies in the new lot that's proposed, and that's what we have to deal with. And whether we're comfortable with that. We don't have to, we're not going to make a decision tonight. It's something that this is the first discussion we've had on this. So I urge all board members, if they haven't already, to get out there and take a look. It sounds like we have a question regarding the drainage and whether, maybe that's something that if you don't have to solve now, I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's a question we'd like to understand. That if the drainage is changed, is it okay to be tied in the future? I don't know if that's something, Laura, that we can find out about the best we can from the town engineering department. But nonetheless, whether or not that drainage is there or not, it's the question whether we're comfortable with the subdivision and creating two lots that are non-conforming as a result of the subdivision. That's the bottom line. And you understand that, Mr. Sponable, right? I mean, you bought the property, and you're looking at a subdivision. Obviously, there's a risk in all these things.
Well, again, when I bought the property based on the deed and the title insurance, it stated it was two separate lots.
So this is Mr. Khan. For whatever it's worth, I just checked the Sims Gifts, taking one from Ms. Shenfield's playbook. It shows up as a single lot on the Schenectady County mapping. And secondly, the owner is listed as a D. David LaVenture. Does anyone know who that is?
I don't.
Mr. Swanable, is that name familiar to you?
Yes, yes, David bought it from auction. He cleaned out the house and then he sold it to me to rehab the house and to split the property. But based on, again, even the information and the title insurance I got from him, and the quick claim deed I got from him, it's two separate lots.
It shows up on the county map as a single lot. So, I mean, I'm going to stop talking here. And I think Laura and, there's obviously an answer to this question that's legal, right? So.
It's legally a single lot.
Okay. All right. So as far as the subdivision goes, since it's a single lot, is there any thoughts from other members on the board on the appropriateness of the subdivision based on the need for the area variances also being included?
I'll speak for myself, just from my personal perspective, I can get behind a couple side yard setback variances, a recommendation to approve those. I live in a neighborhood where there's, quarter-acre lots and don't have much room between our garages and the next property line. But I think the question is character of the neighborhood and suitability of use, and it goes back to Jengus's point initially. What is the effect on the comprehensive plan when we're making a recommendation for this specific development? It would be sort of counter to the character of the neighborhood. If I've done my math correctly, we'd be effectively creating two lots that are smaller than any lot on the block currently. So the home that is currently existing on the parcel is a bit oversized for a third of an acre, and it would seem to me that there'd have to be a very tasteful development of that second lot to not change the character of the neighborhood.
I would. So this is Chris, Dave. I don't know if you were finishing on that point, but I think your last point actually confirms it would change the character. Like I'm thinking very strongly that this would definitely change the character of that neighborhood because of the reasons you stated. And even if you really had a great development plan on what used to be Lot 5, the beauty and the size and the scale of that house is existing is going to look like it doesn't quite fit on the land if it were to be divided as such. And just to piggyback on that thought, we as a town are kind of faced with the potential of folks. There's lots of little spaces around Niskayuna that current standards and codes would make a lot of non-conforming approvals that we really can't risk setting a precedent to, in my opinion.
I'd be interested in getting some more details about what are the lot sizes in the neighborhood there. I've got is a snapshot of what the proposal. So it's not far-reaching enough to know whether or not it's suitable in keeping with the neighborhood, Mr. Laflamme, like you state. I just don't have enough data to say that. You may be absolutely correct. But if all those lots aren't, again, I don't know, we're 15,000 square feet. Obviously, it'd be really important what type of home, if we were to approve this, what type of home would go in there and make sure that it would fit with the neighborhood. There seems to be some unique housing styles along that road there. I don't know, we call it historic or whatever, and I'm not an expert there, because I leave that to Mr. DiArpino. But there seems to be some unique, I don't want to say historic, but unique construction there that, you have to be careful about what gets built there. So no matter what happens here, we definitely would have to send this one to the Architectural Review Board, would be my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, the street has a variety of architectural styles. That is true, but the spacing and the area of square footage for the space of the land, I think would be.
Do you have that data, Mr. Laflamme? I mean, you've looked at all the lots and pulled up a map. I don't have that information.
I'm very familiar with walking down that street, and it's something I'm accustomed to looking at. I was not prepared to do the math, as Dave pointed out, but I kind of did some rough math, and I was thinking the same thing, that if this were to be approved, we'd now create two of the smallest lots in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little research. It's the first time looking at it, but just my familiarity with the neighborhood.
Laura, is that something the planning office could do for us and get an aerial or some kind of a view of what size of the lots are there so we could have some information for a decision? Is that reasonable?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can have that for the next meeting. Mm-hmm.
That would be, appreciate it.
I think it's important too, especially the ones right across the street that are the most recent ones that were approved. It was part of the home subdivision. I mean, those two lots are sitting right across the street. So I think it's important that we, look at the square footage on those lots overall as well as a direct comparison.
Well, I believe that.
I think as well as the design of their houses.
Yep, exactly. And I believe those were compliant R1 subdivisions, right? So, and it might be just because their land was available also. I mean, again, this is a unique situation here, So me personally, I'd like to see some more information because it would help me make my decision whether it's suitable or not. That's my view. That's just where I stand. Again, it's up to the board also. Thoughts? No?
I mean, just so we'll get the final calculations from Laura and Clark, but just for looking at Sim's gifts, it would be the two smallest lots on the street. But I think we're talking within triple-digit square feet. So let's just get what the final numbers are. We'll look at it, but to echo Mr. McPartland and Mr. Laflamme, I mean, we have a current R1 definition based on our current code. I find it hard pressed for us to recommend that we would do a subdivision, that we would propose to the ZBA that a subdivision that takes that to non-conforming on the square footage for an R1 is something that we would stand behind. If there's a case for doing that, I don't think I've seen it yet.
Yeah, and I think the case for me revolves around suitability for the area proposed, right? So if all the lots, again, I don't have the data, Mr. Laflamme, if all the lots are 15,000 square feet, I can look at it a little bit differently. But if that's not the case, then it's definitely setting a precedent. So I'd just like to have some more information personally. The side yard variance, the 7 foot, well, it is what it is. I mean, I don't think that's the end of the world personally, because we've seen that other things, but I think it just revolves around, allowing a slightly greater than 15,000 square foot lot in where 18,000 square foot is required. That's the bottom line. Any other comments on this? this point in time, or anything for you, Mr. Sponable?
No, thank you. I just want to express my concern and why I went through the process that I went through based on the information that I received.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to carry this forward. If you have any additional information, Mr. Sponable, we appreciate it, or your engineer. We'll get the planning department to kind of give us an aerial, some summarization, I guess, of some of the sizes of the lots, so we know what we're dealing with there. And everybody, please get over and take a look at it, see what your thoughts are, and we'll have to, if we're ready, we can give you some guidance and possibly take action at the next meeting. It'd be great to have a project lead also for this one. I did send that out, because it's a tricky one, but it'd be nice to have somebody have the point person and give a recommendation on this. Okay. All right. Anything else on the subject right now? It's a tough one. Okay. I'm seeing nothing further on this subject. We'll move on, and we'll pick it up again at our next meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. And that brings us to 2305 Knott Street, and this is a signage change at LT's. And the signage and the agenda statement included in the packet basically changes this to Tequila's Mexican Grill. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at it and what your thoughts were. I think that's all we're looking at, Laura. Is any feedback from the planning board on the proposed signage?
Yeah, the only, it's not a tenant change, so it doesn't need site plan review. Just a name change, but I guess one of the questions that Clark and I had for you was that one of the signs is internally lit and kind of matches the way that Tai Tai Bistro is. This is internally lit. It's very similar to Dollar Tree and Tai Tai Bistro and Smashburger. And then this one is non-illuminated and it's a mega board. And so I'm not sure that it's actually violating anything, but I would certainly think that it would be better to have consistent signs for a single tenant.
Yep. Does it have, it's the same size and everything, it's just that it's a different material and it's not illuminated?
So this is 24 inches by 120 inches. This one's 25 by 117. It's similar size. I think because of the fabrication, the measurements are slightly different, but it's a very similar size.
And the one that's on the, I guess it would be facing west, the LT's one, I think that has external lighting on it now. Is that true?
Yeah, I think those little guys right there are lights. Yes.
So that's what they're thinking, probably, that this one is going to be externally lit versus the other one that's internally lit. Is that what
He actually, I mean, that's some thing that we could get from them is, are they just going to utilize the existing light, the external lighting on here or not?
Yeah,
I
it says
it's
non-illuminated.
just a little haphazard. I mean, maybe I'm totally out of line here. But,
No, that's a good comment, Laura, because it says non-illuminated. If you're planning on using the existing lighting to illuminate, then it is illuminated. So which is it, right?
Well, I think isn't the non-illuminating referring to the one on the sides? The one that's facing.
no, so the weird thing is the one that's illuminated is the one that faces the parking lot, and the one that's not illuminated is the one that faces Balltown Road.
Yeah, so it seems like they're doing the one facing the parking lot internally illuminated, and then the one facing Balltown Road, they're just going to use the existing lights.
Yeah, I think so.
Even though it's non-illuminated. It's not internally illuminated.
Yeah, it's not internally illuminated. The one facing Balltown Road is. I don't know. So that's the only issue, right? But everything else is. I mean, everything on this is conforming, right?
The logo is okay. They're a little bit on this one.
Does someone named Tequila own the grill?
No.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It was a joke because I have a pet peeve about misplaced apostrophes.
Yeah. Well, that was the one that. So you folks will have to help me on this, and I'm gonna go completely public in this one. What is the logo signifying?
I don't know. I think that's
I
an
thought it was an
agave plant.
agave
Isn't
tree,
that
like
what
an agave, but like the plant that where you make tequila.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a plant from which the beverage comes from. Okay. I mean, I recognize a little lime sliver there, so that's good.
I think that was my guess. I didn't research it, but I was presuming that that's what it was.
Yeah, and it seems like at least on the computer, the one on the west seems to be brighter. I'm assuming that's just a function of whatever color they used on the computer. I'm assuming they're both the same color, you know. Yeah, that one just seems brighter for some reason. Might just be me.
Yeah.
So we can confirm the lighting on the Balltown side is external and confirm the colors are the same.
Right.
If you want to push for conformity and signage for a single tenant, I actually don't have the situation a whole lot. Smashburger had mirror image signs on their corner, but there aren't that many corner lots in ShopRite Plaza.
That might be a function of cost for the applicant. Maybe that's why they're choosing. So it's a question at least, why aren't they doing the same on both facades, you know? And whatever they do, and I'm sure the board would agree with me, we'd like to see it in conformance with whatever the regulations are for the size. So we don't have to, deviate from that at all. So they could come in with compliance with the size and everything also. That would make, a lot easier for all of us.
Laura, we might want to check. I know there's a requirement for how far away the sign can be from the building. It looks like it protrudes out, the internally lit one. Looks like it protrudes out a decent amount. It's hard to tell.
Now here. That's usually standard. We can definitely double check it and make sure they all conform. And I guess the question is, I believe, and Clark and I, this came in so late, we just popped it on here so you guys would know what's going on, is that, I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. Never mind.
Okay, I mean, Laura, I was going to say, Ray's sign works so many times with us that they should know by now that consistency, conformance first, right, to the code, some level of consistency, whichever direction it takes it, both externally lit or both, internally lit, provided it's within code, right? I mean, it just seems that, for a company that deals with us so many times, they should really be able to educate their clients on, this is what's going to be conforming and this is what's not going to need to go in front of the planning board.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Khan.
Mr. Khan, I had the same impression. I felt like the last couple signs were really rushed. The packages were pretty sparse, I'll say.
And also Mr. Oster's comment, I think we'll pass that along, whether Mr. Tequila owns this place or not.
Well, the one part of the sign that's a little iffy is the lime as the comma, because it puts you over 4 colors. So it's a little iffy. Although if you consider the logo to just be a logo, it's probably all right.
Yeah.
So do we have enough feedback, Laura, you think, in plain word for the applicant?
As long as we're generally speaking on the same page, we'll reach out and see if we can get that a little bit tighter. Is there any major concerns with? Oh, that's what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure that the CN requires you to at least look at the signs, right? So I just want to make sure you're generally speaking okay with them, and then we can work to make sure they're within the code and try and make them contiguous between the two if we can. My preference probably is for them both to be internally lit. We used to have them all be externally lit, gold leaf, but I think just because it's so removed from the road and the facade is so large, that typically did not really give people an impression of what was in the plaza or pull anybody off of Balltown Road. So I think that's why the code has changed, and that's why over time the signs have changed to internally lit. And I actually think that it's more conforming with the businesses that are next door to do an internally lit. In which case, my recommendation would be to have them both be internally lit. If possible.
Yeah. Sounds reasonable to me, Laura.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
I have just one small comment. Is there any issue with the word tequila, I mean, advertising liquor, whether it's the name of a, Mexican bar or not, right next door to the high school?
That's a good point, Daisy, but I don't know.
I think the only speech that's regulated is hate speech. Generally speaking, we don't have anything in our code. Like the only time that you can kind of like exclude something is if you allow it somewhere else. Like, we have that 500 radius for, tobacco and smoking and stuff like that. But I think with freedom of speech and things like that, I don't think that you can exclude that name just because of its proximity to that's. Paul Briggs can jump in here. He unmuted when I was talking. I'm very sorry about that, Paul Briggs.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laura, on that one. Okay, so unless anybody else has any other comments, which are always welcome, of course, Laura will get back with our comments and with her comments and planning department's comments to see if they can tighten this up. If they have the budget for 2 identical signs, that'd be great. If they don't, at least if we can get them to a spot where they are similar in nature, maybe slightly different on lighting, at least get it as far as we can get it to being consistent would be great. All right. And you can give the applicant that feedback for us, Laura, we'd appreciate it.
Got it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Okay. Again, interrupt me if I'm going too fast here, if there's something else you want to add on any of these subjects. Otherwise, we'll move to reports, which we'll turn it over to Laura to talk about the things that she has under reports here. If you want, I can tell you what they are, Laura. First was Rivers Ledge and Fusco project updates.
Oh, thanks. So Rivers Ledge is still blasting. They have a building permit in for their first building. They have very close to final engineering drawings that they're working back and forth with the engineering department on. So you could potentially see construction of some of the utilities, within a month or two in the county right of way. And they're working really hard on their Pike Park plans as well. They got submitted to the Canal Corps, I think, last week. And so we're in regular communication with them. I'd say they're all systems go right now. They're working very hard to get that project up and running, which is great. And the Knott Street project, I have not directly spoken with Dave Fusco about it. The last time that I had spoken with him, he was winterizing it and he was capping the foundation off so that there couldn't be moisture. Clearly, they've started framing the first floor. Not a bad thing. I think we were all a little bit frustrated that that sticker went up and that the project was kind of stalled. My guess is that the price of wood got reasonable, but it seems as though he's just moving forward. So if I get more information on that, I'll let you know. But anybody who's interested in driving by, there's significant framing on the first floor now. So I would actually expect, based upon the timeline or how quickly that framing is going up, that he would be looking at rentable space in late spring, early summer.
Okay, great. And the next item you have was the ARB update. I guess that'd be Clark.
Sure, I can give an update. Dave can jump in as well. I know we're in the process of adding a couple more architects to the ARB, and I know one of the existing members sent on a resume of a very well qualified architect, and I know David has a couple more people in mind that we're reaching out to. We're primarily working with Joel on his projects right now, taking another look at the Kelts Farm project, just looking at the homes that he would be putting there. And we've been working on the Troy Road project. We had kind of tabled that while he was talking about selling the existing building. But now, since he's really done some really significant work reinforcing that building, and he's going to sell it. And so he's made a real step towards developing and saving that property. So as soon as he gets a buyer for that, we will engage that person relative to that property. And we're working on getting some materials up on the website. So we have a meeting on Wednesday. Our next big push is to get some more information on the website.
Okay.
I don't know, did I miss anything, Dave?
No, that pretty much summed it up. Unfortunately, I have a meeting at the same time that the ARB meets, so I've been unable to attend the meetings directly, at least for the past 2 months.
I know, I think we had 3 members, we lost 1, and we're trying to get membership up to 5, I believe, or we have the ability in the resolution to go up to 5. So we're looking for a couple more ARB members.
All right, well, thank you for that update, Mr. Henry. And the last thing, Laura, was a COVID-19 update.
So, I think you guys are probably all aware the numbers in Schenectady County are not going down. Although it doesn't appear that the governor is going to shut the entire area down. As long as the numbers continue to go up, I think just continue to expect to be meeting remotely. And I would definitely plan for the next meeting to be remotely. My guess is at least all of February as well. If I hear anything more directly, I'll let you know. But I'm hoping for, good rainbows and things to happen in the spring, but right now it's still the dark winter. so I would just say, and if you're having any problems, let me know. But for now, let's just continue as is, and then, reach out to me if you've got any issues.
And appreciate the board seems to do a pretty good job of this virtual meeting. I think it goes pretty well. So thank you, everybody. Okay, that brings us to commission business. So I'll go down the list, see if anybody's got anything. Mr. Rossi, do you have anything for us tonight?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Dave, Mr. Diarpino?
Nothing further.
Mr. McPartland?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Mr. Khan?
No, thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Laflamme?
While it's still fresh, regarding 2456, can I just share my screen real quick? I saw a nod. Is that going to work?
Yes.
All right.
You got the virtual nod.
The collective virtual nod. Can you guys see this?
It's coming. Yep.
Excel sheet. So Kev, I just took a second and access to an MLS database. This data is all based on multiple listings over the years, but just take a snapshot of Hilltop. That's the square footage. So Dave was very accurate. My assessment was pretty. There will be nothing out of these that are pre-existing square footages. No lots would be any smaller. These 2 lots subdivided would be the 2 smallest. And the ones that are missing, I can fill those in. I'll grab that data from some other source, and I can share this with the group.
Yeah, you can share it with Laura too. We can work through Laura with whatever you have. Okay, that'd be great.
Kevin,
Yes.
Paul Briggs, just so the board knows, and I'm probably telling you something you don't know, but with respect to the Hilltop property, it's very, very common to see deed descriptions with often 2 or 3 different lot numbers. Schenectady is notorious for having that. When they designed many of the streets in Schenectady, the lots were very, very small. And when you look at a deed description, it may be lots 7, 8, and 9 make up one property. This is one property. It's always been one property. It may have 2 separate deed descriptions or 2 separate lot numbers on the deed, but for the town purposes, it's one lot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Briggs, and that's yes. Thank you. Pointing that out. All right. Do you have anything else, Mr. Laflamme?
Nope, that is it.
All right. And Ms. Gold?
Nothing except noting that finally our hardware store is open.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to get over there, but did you stop in? Anybody stop in?
No, but I'm going to.
I drove by last week and it wasn't open yet. So when did it open?
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, great. I have to get over
They are not able to put the greenhouse on the front of it yet because there was COVID related delays in the specific coating of glass that you have to have for the greenhouse. So that they've taken that out as a separate permit. So the facade is still in work, but there wasn't any reason that you couldn't get customers in the building, and then we'll work with them on how they, kind of finalize the landscaping. So they've got to finalize the landscaping, finalize the greenhouse, finalize the canopy. And they did do some updates to like the handicap ramp, which are good, but they have to finalize that with their final. So we will be getting an as-built There should be more greenery there in the spring. There will be a greenhouse. It's not forgotten. That's just a COVID related delay, but we'll let them get the customers in there, get some revenue going, getting people excited about the store, and then we can finish it off in the spring.
Not meaning to be funny, I guess for those of us who live elsewhere in Niskayuna, I'll have to drive there, park somewhere, and walk over.
Not saying anything.
That's
Okay.
pretty good to go up.
That was Ms. Gold. Did you have anything else, Ms. Gold?
No, thank you.
Okay, and then Ms. Shenfield.
Nope, nothing for me.
I don't really have anything, except I did drive down the access road, and with all that brush or whatever, vegetation cleared, it does seem like it works out pretty well. It cleaned up pretty nicely the road there. So I haven't been in the store yet, but looks like something to do this week. So thank you for that. So I have nothing else further except for I need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So motion.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Khan, and it was seconded by Mr. Oster. Here we go. Thank you, sir. Okay, all those signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing no one opposed, we'll adjourn the January 11th, 2021 meeting at 9:42 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, thank you. Have a good night.